welcome back to another episode of the Games Gone By podcast. I'm your host, Adam, and today we are discussing Disney's 2022 epic drama, Andor. Boys, are you guys ready to discuss the greatest Star Wars property ever made?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we're going to talk about Andor and nothing else the whole time.
Jeff is 100% on the best Star Wars property. I don't know if I'm quite there, but I did very much enjoy Andor.
I may or may not have ranked it above the original trilogy. Am I allowed to do that? Is that blasphemous?
I mean, maybe a little bit, but it's okay.
Austin, not quite as high as Jeff, but still very high on this. I think we all really enjoyed it. So this came out in September of 2022. The Disney tagline reads, "In a dangerous era, Cassian Andor embarks on a path destined to turn him into a rebel hero." Now, guys, this is like our third Star Wars-related episode, so there's no need to retread the whole when did you start watching Star Wars and all of that we've done, I think, a couple of times now.
Yeah, we're a Star Wars podcast at this point.
Hell yeah.
But needless to say, this was not something that before it came out, I had it wasn't on my radar at all, let's say the least. I think that thing that Disney and Marvel, they were doing their like showcase thing where they were showing all of the properties coming in the future. I think I saw it on there at one point, and then I didn't even think about it again until it was already out and people were telling me to listen to it. Did you guys, or watch it rather, did you guys have like a whole lot of experience with any of the pre-release marketing for the first season?
So I think I can recall the one like screenshot they have of like all the logos of the shows that they once had sort of teased everyone. Mm-hmm. And the three that I seem to recall being excited about is something called The Acolyte. There is what I think is now a canceled show, something about like an X-Wing fighter squadron whose name I can't even remember. That looked interesting. And the only other thing that I cared about at all was Andor. And that's purely because the Rogue One movie is easily my favorite Disney Star Wars movie. So even though I had no idea what they were going to do with the character, I was at least interested. Although honestly, I was most excited for Acolyte because I thought it was going to be a lot about like dark Jedi bad guys. Austin, what about you?
I consume everything all the time. So I definitely knew about Andor. I watched all the trailers. I followed it. The problem, I really think this show was kind of done dirty with a lot of its marketing stuff. I just, naming it Andor, I think, is a weird decision in my opinion. I know Star Wars Rebels already exist and they couldn't use that, but this show in general to me feels more like a rebellion story. So I think people didn't care to watch a story about this character from Rogue One. And I think I kind of fell into that same camp. It turns out it's really good and like it's great, but I definitely was of the opinion that like, do we really need a show about like Cassian Andor from Rogue One? Like, that's not something I'm super interested in. Of course, I watched it anyway, and I watched it as soon as it released because I do that with all of this crap. But like, I wasn't excited about it going into it, I don't think.
Pre-release did nothing for me. I watched it the second it aired.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally, though, that's just me. That's how I do these things. But yeah, I didn't really care much about, like, the trailers I saw. I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, everything building up to it, I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, I don't really want a show about Cassian Andor, but I'll watch it anyway. And, like, it turns out I was wrong. But I think a lot of people probably fell into the same camp of, like, we don't want a show about this random guy from Rogue One.
You know, I think Austin's right. Like, obviously, in retrospect, I love the name. I love the character. I think it works fine now knowing what I know. But yeah, I think going into it, or really not going into it, right? When I was just like, oh, the guy from Rogue One, like, who cares? He didn't even really, like, to me, wasn't even that much of a standout character in the movie. But like you said, it turns out all of that's wrong. And the characterization of him is amazing. The way they use him to weave the different plots together is awesome. Fantastic stuff. Do we just want to go ahead and go into the first arc here, which I believe all aired at the same time, right? They said, hey, we're not going to have a repeat of some of these other shows where they suck in the first one so no one watches it again. We're going to give you 3 right here.
Did they drop all 3 or did they drop 2?
No, they did drop all 3, I believe. Or it was either they dropped all 3 or they like dropped 2 and then like a day later or something dropped 3. Like it was something weird, but I do believe it's all 3 right at the beginning.
No, you're right. I've got the Wikipedia open now. All 3 dropped on the same day, September 21st, 2022.
which personally I think was a great decision, because I know you guys disagree with me, but I think those first 2 episodes are incredibly slow and just
them might be fighting words, but go ahead.
Even on rewatch, we all rewatched for this, just to clarify, within the last 2 weeks, and I thought it was very slow. Again, even on rewatch, and knowing what happens and knowing what comes, I was like, okay, but it was hard for me not to stare at my phone for half of it. And I know that's fighting words. I know that's whatever, but I found the flashbacks to be tedious. I found a lot of the walking around on Ferrix and stuff. Just I get it, the build, it's important for stuff that happens later. But at the time, it just does not do anything to grab me personally.
This show had me hooked immediately just because it took the risk of opening up in a Star Wars brothel. Honestly, the first moments of this series looks more like something out of Tron or maybe the beginning of Mass Effect 2 or something than it does Star Wars. But it is just so interesting and exciting. And the first 15 minutes of the show, you're discovering all this about Andor. He's some guy, he's searching for his sister. He's on this rough and tough planet. And then he gets jumped by these non-Imperial security guards, these corrupt dudes working in this company town. There's just so much world building that happens in the first 15 minutes. And it ends with Andor killing a man in cold blood that all I wanted to do was watch more of this show.
It's like gray cold blood though, right? Because
sorry, cold blood isn't the right word. He
it's lukewarm blood.
Mercilessly kills someone after a very hot-blooded scuffle. You're right.
I mean, he really didn't have much of a choice, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yes, he murders a guy, but it's not like he wanted to do that.
No, you're right.
It opens with him looking for his sister in this brothel, right? And he makes the high crime of talking to the dancer that 2 Pre-Mor security guards were waiting for a dance for. They're basically hey, no cutting in line. He's I'm just here to talk. He ends up talking too loud, as we'll find out later, and mentions where he's from. Big mistake. But those 2 guys, as he's leaving, he doesn't really have a lead on his sister. They follow him out, and they're pulling the whole, you're in the wrong part of town. Let me see your papers or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then he tells them that there's money in his pocket. And they're like, how much? Oh, 700 credits? That's what a coincidence. That's exactly what the fine for your made up crime is. So of course he gets in a little scuffle with him and he tries to just take their gun and pull it on them. But in the process of this, one gets shot, right? And honestly, dude, one of the greatest scenes in this whole show is they have the camera on the guy who's like, you killed him. You killed him. And then suddenly he realizes, oh my God, you're going to have to kill me too, because this will not go away. So he starts, his entire tone on his face, his facial expression just changes. And he's like, no, we can go to them together. I'll explain what happened. And mid-sentence, Cassian just shoots him because he has to, essentially. And that right there just sets off a chain reaction of events that just ruminates throughout the galaxy.
Yeah. It really is crazy how much of the rebellion and just things that happen in the rebellion stem from this one act from Cassian that was kind of completely an accident.
It's just so this show is ultimately about the corruption and oppression of the Empire, right? And from the very first moment of the show, you are bearing witness to how these systems, these institutions of the Republic, presumably, but also institutions you might find familiar or recognize yourself, are deeply corrupt. And that's what sows the seeds and ignites the sparks of rebellion throughout the galaxy. It happens from the very first moment of the show, when these corrupt security guards try and shake Cassian down just for being in the wrong place.
And it's a tad unclear exactly what relationship the corporate security company Pre-Mor Mordana or whatever the hell it's called, its relationship to the Empire, because as we do see later, the Empire assumed direct control. So we know that there's some amount of independence granted to us. Is it the same as what was under the Republic? Who knows? Maybe that's something we'll explore more. But you're right, Jeff. It immediately sets off with just this is the stuff our characters are working with. This is what they're living under. It almost seems stereotypical at first, but it really just fits in right with the Empire. What would you guys say is your your impression of the flashbacks that come through, because we get a lot of these. And to Austin's point about it feeling slow, when it came through on my rewatch, I didn't think it was slow. I was like, oh my god, so much happening, and yet it still felt slow. And I blame that on the flashbacks. I even obsessively calculated like their exact percentage of runtime. I was like, it's way too long.
11, 16, yeah.
It varies between like 10 and 15%. It's not a ton. I think in the third episode of the first arc, right, it works really well because stuff actually happens. But in the first couple, there's probably like 4 of those that could be one scene, and I don't know that you would lose anything from it.
Yeah, I think we can all agree the flashbacks are like our least favorite part of the show. I understand what they were trying to do with them. They were trying to give you hooks into Cassian's background, maybe just from one throwaway line in Rogue One where he says he's been in this fight since he was a kid, since he was 6 years old, right? But ultimately, like on the rewatch, I did find them very interesting. It just feels like they're maybe trying to do a bit too much. So on your first watch, you're kind of just overwhelmed with all of the things happening. Austin, would you say you were overwhelmed and that made you disengaged, or are they just boring?
I just think they're boring. I actually find them underwhelming. I don't think they do much to... I know the idea, right, like you said, is to kind of give some context to Cassian being in the fight since he was a small child, and like to give context to his sister. But like ultimately, I personally feel like that whole story arc goes nowhere. So it doesn't... It's not a hook for me. It's like I don't necessarily need to know Cassian's childhood and like where he came from. And I know it's also to kind of show how he gets connected to his mother figure, Maarva. And like I understand that it's all to tie all these things into Cassian's childhood, but it just doesn't do anything for me that couldn't have either been like one scene or like a little piece of dialogue, because it just feels like it's wasted time for me.
I don't know. I agree that if you like cut out the 30% of the runtime that was the flashbacks, like nothing would really be lost. But I totally believe if they had never addressed like, why is Cassian looking for his sister, or where did he come from? Like, is Maarva actually his mom? Like, if they had done nothing to set up his background, you would have an endless cadre of nerds that would be like, why didn't they tell us? And blah, blah, blah.
Well, it doesn't have to be nothing. I just think the amount of time that is spent on it is maybe unnecessary, in my opinion.
Do you find the fact that they're on like maybe not abandoned, but like a disaster-prone Republic mining world interesting? Were you a fan of Lord of the Flies, or...
I've never read Lord of the Flies. There's my crazy hot take for
asking Austin if he's read a book live on air.
It's not even a hot take. It's not even a hot take. I just haven't read it.
I will say this, Jeff. There's a part where Maarva is like, when she's first confronting him, like, who did you tell you were from Canary? She's like, I've always told everyone you were from Fest, which I'm pretty sure when Rogue One came out, whatever lore book came out around the same time, he was from Fest, right? So that was like the official lore. And they kind of tweaked it a little bit for this, but still kept like part of it, which I thought was neat. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that first 15 minutes you were talking about, that's so intense. Right after that, we see our first introduction to Cyril Karn, who is one of my favorite characters until kind of suddenly he isn't. But he is this pre-war officer, and basically he is his little precinct is where that murder happened, right? And his commander is about to leave to go to an Imperial summit and basically report about crime in their sector. And he's like, yeah, just sweep this under the rug. And there's this great scene where Cyril's like, no, they've been murdered. And the guy's like, they weren't murdered. They got in a fight. Like, they were at a brothel that they weren't supposed to be able to, afford, or a brothel that's supposed to be illegal, drinking drinks they shouldn't be able to afford, like all while on duty. Like, no, these guys picked a fight with someone they shouldn't have, and they suffered the consequences. This isn't going on my record. I'll see you when I get back.
Yeah, the wizened old like director of security for this corporation, whatever its name may be, that is the second moment in the series that is just like so well done, such high quality, right? Like moments before we get the monologue from the security guard right before he gets gunned down from Andor, and then we go right into this great scene with this like old British-esque guy trying to explain to the young overeager up-and-comer that like, what are you doing? This is not the way the world works. Like, stop with the zealousness. And Cyril is an interesting character because I guess he's an Imperial zealot. Like, I think he's there to try and display like the zealousy of people who get caught up in an authoritarian system like the Empire. But I do struggle to figure him out over time. He grows on me on a rewatch, but you're right. He sort of falls out of being an interesting character towards the end of the series.
He's very weird. He's very uncomfortable, and I think in a good way for the most part. Like, I think he's a well written uncomfortable character. But like every time he's on screen, it's just kind of like, I don't know how to read you. I don't know what your like motivations are. Like, yes, he's obviously very zealous. Like, but it doesn't feel like he's trying to get ahead. Like, a lot of times you read a character like that as someone who's like just trying to get ahead and trying to be better and like, you know, climb the ladder. But he's just like, the rule of law. Like, he very much believes in like, this is what the book says, and this is what we have to do, no matter what the context or the events around it, and we need to pursue it to the very end, no matter the cost. And it's like, whoa, dude, calm down. Like,
there's a great scene where he's talking to his underlings and trying to get them to do all this, and they're just so disinterested, and they can't really tell that he's being serious. And he just kind of cuts one off and he's like, 2 Pre-More employees were murdered. And then the whole room kind of goes quiet and they're like, oh shit, this guy's actually like really serious about
right.
it.
It's like, and we care about that. And he's like, yes. This is definitely the energy that is coming out there.
We're simply asking for information.
Have you ever been there?
What difference does that make?
They have their own way of doing things.
This is the murder of 2 Pre-More employees. Put out a bulletin. Kenari human men wanted for questioning. Slam their channels, flood it. Set up a desk here to monitor anything that comes in. Let's go!
So we get introduced to Cassian and Cyril both pretty early. And then the whole thing that's kind of going on here at this point is that when Cassian gets back, he has to kind of, you know, there's a great scene with that character Brasso where they're sort of talking and he's like, what were you doing last night? And he's like, nothing. What about you? He's like, no, we were together. Like, we were drinking. And then Brasso kind of sees his face messed up and he's like, oh yeah, you insulted my choice of drink and I punched you for it or something. So immediately when Cassian gets back to, it's Ferrex, right? He knows something. Everyone that he's talking to kind of knows something's up and they know he's in trouble. And he has this Star Path unit that he's basically trying to sell because he's like, I need to get some money and get off this planet because it's only a matter of time before they catch up to me, right? And so Bix, his like former lover and childhood friend, has a connection to some operative. He doesn't really know who it is, but it's like the buyer, they call him. And so at this point, Cassian's like, all right, Bix, I need you to set up a meeting with me so I can meet this buyer, so that I can sell this, get my money, and get the hell off this planet. And I think at this point, he's still under the delusion that Maarva's going to come with him. But what is it really at this point, would you say, that is carrying the first 2 episodes before we meet Luthen? Like, it's building up the relationship with Bix and Tim, because Tim has to ultimately betray him. It's showing you B2 Emo, the little droid. It's showing his relationship with Maarva. See, like, I'm with Jeff here. There's so much character building in the first 90 minutes of this show, like an astonishing amount.
Yeah, it is so much fun on a rewatch. Like, I don't think I ever appreciated Cassian showing up on Ferrex and immediately going to Brasso and being like, hey man, we were together last night. Until like I was really paying attention. And one of the reasons that happens is that the show does have a lot of characters. Like, we're 2 episodes in and I think we've gone through 8 or 10 names. So I totally understand it being overwhelming and a little difficult to follow. But that's why, like, man, if you ever had trouble getting Andor into Andor the first time, like, sit down and watch it again and like pay attention. There are so many little details here as we start to explore the background of Cassian's life, all with like the overarching pressure of he's on the run from the law. He just murdered 2 security guards and he's like some rough and tumble dude on this industrial planet, and he needs to make sure that like him and the people he cares about don't get run down by the cops.
Yeah, and I get where you guys are coming from with that for sure. And it's not even that I entirely disagree, as much as I just think that a lot of that character building can in the moment feel like it's spinning its wheels waiting for Pre-More to get there and actually do the thing that we're waiting for. Like, it feels like we're just waiting for Pre-More to show up to get Cassian. Like, we know it's coming, So it just feels like they're spinning wheels waiting to get there. It's kind of how it felt for me.
But we're waiting for them to solve it, though. Like, it's really not until the beginning of episode 3 they even know who it is and where he is, right? All of that information slowly trickling in. Like, we see a scene where Cyril is basically looking at a floating head of Cassian, and his guys are like, yeah, but this guy's not from Kenari. We know the person was from Kenari. And then it pans over, and the woman from the brothel is in handcuffs, and it's like, that's how they find out he was from Kenari, right? And then you have Tim is the one that actually went and reported that there was a sighting of someone from Kenari on Ferrix, right? So you really do have to like go through all those steps.
It's so interesting to me that there are basically like two things. All of this could have gone away for Andor, right? Like it could have just blown over, nothing would have happened. But two critical important factors. Cyril is a zealot who wants to get this done, is going to make this happen, and sort of like focuses Premor on really getting it done. And it's the consequences of Cassian's own actions. His ex-lover's jilted boyfriend decides to call him in. And if not for Tim's jealousy and Cyril's zealousness, like the show wouldn't have happened.
I don't really know how Tim's part in this is the consequence of Andor's actions. He was just talking to Bix. I don't really know how that's consequences of his actions, but
I'm not projecting. I am assuming there, but like, you know,
Projecting. Podcast all of a sudden.
Yeah, like, whoa, wait a second. What was it that you said last time? There's a podcast for that, but it's not this one.
Yeah, that is correct. No, I am kind of assuming that like, so you come back to, Cassian comes back to Ferrix, and you immediately see, while he has like a deep relationship with Brasso, who's still like willing to immediately do him, you know, like relatively personal favors, other people he's kind of run afoul of. Like there's the guy, Nurchi, who comes up later. I think that's his name, who comes up later at the end of the show too, that like, you know, gets his big, tall alien buddy to try and shake down Cassian. Like Cassian has been on this planet a while. He clearly like pushes the boundaries of friendships, you know, and you're not
he owes
quite
tons
sure.
of people money.
Yes, exactly. He owes tons of people money. So that's where I'm making some of the assumption that, like, you know, it's not totally wrong for Tim to be suspicious of Cassian hanging around his girlfriend all the time.
It's probably not the first hushed conversation from a distance that Tim has witnessed between the two of them.
Exactly.
And that's maybe, I don't know. It's good objectively, I guess, but it doesn't do much for me in those moments. It's not until Luthen shows up in episode 3 that I feel like it really starts to kick into gear.
I'll say, to your point, Austin, a lot of the payoff for these minor characters happens in episode 7 and then 11. So
yes,
it is setting up things a bit ahead of time. But yeah, no, I'm glad you bring up Luthen. He's sort of our third major character, I would say, after Cassian and Cyril. And he is the buyer that Bix was referring to. And so, yeah, the third episode, this is the one that I always tell everyone, hey, if you're going to watch this show, just make it to episode 3. If you're still not liking it in episode 3, you probably won't like it, but there's a lot of payoff there. It's a lot of fun stuff. Basically, Luthen comes to buy the Starpath unit, or so we think. You know, it would turn out that Luthen is not there for the Starpath unit. He knows everything about Cassian, and he really wants him on a heist team, it would turn out, right? And so they meet, and when they meet, Cassian is using a communicator that he doesn't control, as Luthen is quick to point out is not a smart thing to do when you are running from the space cops. And Premor shows up basically right after they do. What did you guys think about that final climactic scene here with Luthen?
Oh, it's awesome. Like, for me, this is when things really kick into high gear. The conversation between Luthen and Cassian is awesome. The tension of the entire like crowd of townspeople banging and like clattering on any object they can to just make noise and like rattle the Premor guards is so unsettling and so cool. Like the Cassian and Luthen's plans that they are like making up on the fly to escape, Brasso like tying their ship down like completely independently, just like, I know these guys are up to no good and we're gonna mess with them in every way we can. It's all so cool. Like that whole episode, but particularly the back half of it, is like 10 out of 10 for me.
It is so much action. which is just such a great payoff after the build up from the first 2 episodes. And yeah, man, shout out to Brazo for being a real one there. Like he sees the cops roll in and he's just like, motherfucking ACAB.
But they're just like, nah, we're not messing around with these dudes.
I don't know that he would have done that regardless.
Who knows? He might have.
He knew Cassian was in some shit.
Sure.
Sorry, I had a train of thought here. Yes, so Luthen's interaction with Andor is so interesting, and it's fun to see Andor mess up, right? Like the cops zero in on his location because he's left a communicator out there. He's literally talking to his droid in front of the cops because the cops are at his house detaining his mother, standing right in front of the droid, and then he's trying to get B2 Emo's attention. Fantastic droid name, by the way. And that's how they locate him. And so you can think about his character in Rogue One and see this interaction where like Andor is just making a bunch of reckless mistakes, and contrast that with like Luthen's calm, cool, hyper planning like demeanor, right? And you can kind of see how like Andor is not yet the grizzled rebel intelligence agents from Rogue One, and rather this is the beginning of his story and how he becomes that character in Rogue One.
I love everything about the Pre-War security force during this. So like at the beginning of episode 3, their whole like headquarters, like space station, hyperspace is in above the planet, and we see the drop ships come out of it, and that is so fucking cool because I was actually thinking like, surely the Death Star has hyperdrive because it goes to different planets to blow them up, but we never really see that happen, do we? It's just kind of there.
There's one line in Rogue One where the Moncals are all like, Admiral, there's a massive object exiting hyperspace, and that's the only time it's referenced in live action.
But we don't even really see it though. It just kind of like appears, right?
Right. The next shot, the Death Star is there. So.
Right. So I really loved how we saw this thing. We saw the drop ships come out, and they have this like rent a cop aesthetic that is just perfect. It's such a contrast to the Empire, right? Like people are concerned they're there, but people don't seem like afraid the way they are when the Empire shows up later, right? It's almost like they kind of expect some level of incompetence, or like you said with Brasso's just like, oh, it's just Pre-War. I'll destroy their ship. I will face no consequences. And we would be remiss if we did not mention Linus something. His name's not important. It's the sergeant that helps Cyril run this operation.
Oh, he's so funny, dude.
Blows smoke up Cyril's ass for like an entire episode. And it's so funny because it's obvious to everyone around Cyril that they're like, this is the guy leading us, really? And he gives this speech right before they launch down to the planet where everyone is just like picking their nails and staring at the equivalent of their space phone, just like staring in the distance, not paying attention to him. And the sergeant's like, well done, sir. Very inspiring, sir. And it's just like, no, it wasn't.
Their whole dynamic is like the only funny thing in Andor, and not the only funny thing, but like practically the only funny thing. And it's so good. Like it is hilarious.
Hats off to you and Chief Inspector. 2 men dead, line of duty, colleagues. It's outrageous.
Exactly. The thought of anything less than full engagement on a case like this.
Unconscionable, sir. Dereliction of duty at the minimum.
It would be, wouldn't it?
I've seen it, sir. Half measures. The take it slow, the wait and see. It's a plague on discipline. Face your men, yourself, the rest of your life, knowing you did less than everything you possibly could. I've been saying all along we need a stronger hand with these affiliated planets. There's fermenting out there, sir. Pockets of fermenting.
Yeah, it is absolutely like over the top and kind of absurdist. But like, yeah, Linus the sergeant is just he's another company man, right? I guess Cyril is a company man who really believes in his mission and takes his job so seriously. And the sergeant is another guy who is a company man who believes in his mission, is going to take it all very seriously. Except the sergeant might be kind of good at what he does. Cyril is, I don't know what Cyril is, but
no one does.
They are both very self.
Oh, he was a damn good deputy director, and he will tell you that later. But So what are the big events that happen here, right? We see, so the guards find Bix running, and that's like suspicious. So they try to hold her, right? The Pre-War guards. And they're basically just detaining her and like trying to figure out why she's running. And then Tim sees her detained and starts like running toward them. And the leader of this little squad's like, stop moving, stop moving. And Tim keeps running. And then one of the like guys behind him just shoots him. And the guy who kills Tim kind of looks like it's definitely the first person he's ever killed. Like, these are not hardened troopers, right? Like, these are some rent-a-cops. And the sergeant's even like, give me that rifle and go start the ship. Like, we're getting out of here as soon as this is over, right? Now, that ship he goes to start's the one Brasso tied off, and he dies. So I guess he got his just desserts there. So we have that scene, and then, of course, we have Luthen and Cassian escaping. There's this awesome quote before all the action goes down, where Luthen keeps basically offering to pay him more money if he tells him how he got the Starpath unit. And Cassian's just like, look, man, you got the money, I got the product. What more is there to talk about? And he's like, 1,000 more credits, like 1,000 more credits. And then he says, just give me 1 second here to get to it. So Luthen says, takes more than that, doesn't it? What, to steal from the Empire? What do you need, a uniform, some dirty hands, an Imperial toolkit? They're so proud of themselves they don't even care. They're so fat and satisfied they can't imagine it. Can't imagine what? That someone like me would ever get inside their house, walk their floors, spit in their food, and take their gear. It's an awesome writing. It totally establishes what the Empire's relationship to those people that it's ruling is in this particular depiction of the universe. And it just really brings, I think, life to Cassian and his kind of spirit. Even though he's still got that sort of I'm a mercenary, I want the money thing going on, you can tell that his hatred for the Empire is like, it's deep-rooted.
Absolutely. And this is, I think, the first time like a piece of Star Wars content tries to address the fact that like breaking into an Imperial base is like routine in the franchise, right? Like, what is Imperial security except apparently absolutely nothing? And Andor here, when he's like, all you have to do is act like you belong, is just so good. It finally gives you a reason as to why, like, all these random heroes throughout the franchise can break into an Imperial base. And from Andor's perspective, it's because they don't care. The Empire has so much hubris and is so preoccupied with its own goals and objectives that it doesn't even think to bother about basic things like security. It doesn't matter because you are nothing to them. And it just resonates so well.
Some other fun moments occur during this. Oh my God, the Sergeant Linus is like, there's fermenting, sir. There's pockets of fermenting out there in this galaxy, which I don't even know if that's like the proper way to use that word, but it sure sounds funny as hell. Yeah.
It sounds British or something, but yeah.
So, Cassian and Luthen are escaping, and at this point, Cassian's basically like, I have to get on your ship and go with you. I don't really have much of a choice. He understands that. And so they're going, the Primor guards have set up this ambush. There's this great scene that, Jeff, you caught in the rewatch, which I didn't even notice. He ends up ambushing Cyril's location, and he knows where that is because you see Cyril shoot at a couple of aliens as he's taking over the house and they run out. And then in a scene before Cassian corners him, you see those same aliens running through the street, and Cassian notices them. So it's like he recognizes the aliens, he knows where they live, he goes there and he finds Cyril and he holds him at gunpoint. It's just a great little bit of visual storytelling there.
Yeah, this actually echoes the same reason the Primor guards like detained Bix. Like, they call her out for being like, you look afraid and like you're not running home, like you're panicked looking for something. And so later Andor sees these aliens that are panicked and he knows are fleeing from their home. So like he decides something's up, goes investigates their house, and sure enough is able to hold Cyril at gunpoint, which again, like that's why this show is even better on a rewatch, is because every single scene is so intentional. There's not filler in this show.
Mm-hmm. Austin, what would you say was like the peak part of this episode for you?
Probably the peak for this episode, I definitely think, is the interactions between Cassian and Luthen. For me, like their exchange. The quote that you read is, like you said, I mean, it's peak. It is like the peak of all those moments where Luthen gives any sort of monologue and has a character like respond to that monologue in some way are all excellent.
That's true.
So I think that's definitely the best part of this episode.
Look, you got the money, I got the box. What else is there to talk about?
I'll give you another 1,000 credits to tell me how you got it.
Another 1,000.
Done.
How? You just walk in like you belong?
Takes more than that, doesn't it?
What, to steal from the Empire? What do you need? A uniform, some dirty hands, and an Imperial toolkit. They're so proud of themselves. They don't even care. They're so fat and satisfied. They can't imagine it.
Can't imagine what?
That someone like me would ever get inside their house, walk their floors, spit in their food, take their gear.
The arrogance is remarkable, isn't it?
I love how Cassian puts the gun to the back of Cyril's head. He's like, how many? He's like, I don't know. Luthen just says, kill him. And then immediately Cyril's like,
Yeah.
12, 14, a dozen men, 2 officers, I swear. It's like, he shits his pants so fast.
He's such a little bitch. It's just so in line with his character and like what they've been showing. In the public face, he's the overzealous, like, we will do whatever we can for Primor. We are, like, we have to bring justice. And then when faced with any sort of confrontation, he's just like, yeah, sell out everybody. Like,
is Cyril like an evil, naive, sort of an idiot, like, kind of guy? Like, he's all talk, right? Like, he's around mouthing off, being like, yes, we will uphold the law, bring justice for the Empire, blah, blah, blah. But then, like, he's actually in the shit, and he's out there, like, on the ground.
He's like panicked. Yeah, he's like having constant panic attacks. Like,
he just can't handle it. He's a guy whose ambition just like way outstrips his personality.
Yeah, or his talent.
Yeah.
I think it's funny. It's a real good contrast to Cassian, right? It's like, imagine Cyril in that opening scene. If he was in Cassian's position, man would have fallen to his knees and been like, just take it, take everything. Like, hold me off to Primor jail. Like,
wait, have we finally figured out Cyril? Is he just like, so Cyril is this very like ambitious, but like spineless and incompetent person. And Cassian's just a guy who's trying to get by, but is actually talented at everything he sets his mind to.
Right.
Very possible.
Huh. Cassian is hyper observant, right? And there's some scenes coming up in the next arc that will really highlight that. Is there anything about this arc we haven't mentioned before we move on to the next one?
I think I'm good.
My favorite moment is definitely Cyril's 1,000-yard stare after Luthen and Cassian's escape scheme there. Like, they ruin the ambush because Cassian knows his way around town, sets off an IDE and kills a bunch of the Primor security guards right in front of Cyril's face, and Cyril just can't handle it. And it's just such good cinematography.
And it's made even better by the fact that the way they have the trap set up is it fools them into thinking they've succeeded in killing Cassian for like 10 seconds. And all the looks on their faces are ones of like, did we do it? We did it. And then the thing blows up, like 4 guys die. Cassian and Luthen speed away on a speeder. And then you get the 1,000-yard stare where Cyril sees both his life and his career flashing before his eyes.
You're right. It's not just that like he failed, but his soul was crushed in that moment. Highest highs to the lowest lows.
Moving on to Arc 2, episodes 4, 5, and 6, the Aldhani Heist. Boys, I think this was my favorite arc of them, of the 4. It's sort of hard to pick a favorite, though. It's very Sophie's Choice kind of thing. But there's so much going on here, and it also introduces for the first time 2 of my favorite characters in this show. And that is Daedra Miro, Imperial Security Bureau officer, and Mon Mothma, Republic Senator.
Man, Mon Mothma has been a long time coming, right? Like, she is a character from the original trilogy that has, bounced around the now defunct expanded universe, Star Wars Legends, if you will. And this is the first time that you get really into her character. We almost got scenes from her back during Revenge of the Sith, but all of like the rebel political plots were cut from that movie. And now, finally, after having kind of cameoed in Rogue One, because everyone knew she was there, we get a real character arc for Mon Mothma, who is this rich senator from Chandrila trying to, on the surface, like, slow the injustices of the Empire, and beneath the surface, she is setting up the rebellion. And this is like her story of how her and Luthen kind of stand up this network that is even capable of doing something like blowing up a Death Star.
Yeah, I really liked Mon Mothma here because I think the thing Andor does so well, and then the reason that I kind of made the comment earlier about the show being called Andor being a little weird is because I feel like so much of it is about the formation of the rebellion. And you really see it here with Mon Mothma and Luthen and their interactions. And it starts in this arc in a pretty tangible way where she shows up at, Luthen, it turns out he's like an artifacts dealer, basically. That's his cover. And she shows up here under the guise of like trying to buy artifacts for her husband. And they're having this like coded conversation out in public. And you just see the gears turning in both of their heads of like, what is Luthen doing? He's doing something kind of crazy. And I don't know if I'm ready to take that next step. But like she's kind of getting pulled into it. And we just see how Mon Mothma is being dragged deeper into the rebellion, and how she's like, this is my life now. And I really liked that about her character and kind of her arc throughout this show.
Yeah, how we were just talking about like Cyril coming to terms with the things that he has, voiced his ambitions, right? Mon Mothma is also kind of in a similar situation. Like her and Luthen have very intentionally gone about undermining the Empire in an extremely serious way. And throughout this arc, throughout the show too, you get to see Mon Mothma coming to terms with the decisions she's made, the consequences of her actions, right? And it gets real.
There's this awesome scene, right? So at the end of episode 3, Cassian and Luthen are flying off to wherever they're going. And at the beginning of episode 4, they get to Aldhani, he drops them off, and we'll get to the heist crew in a minute. But after that, Luthen heads back to Coruscant, and he's staring in this mirror, and he's like putting on these dress robes, and he's putting on this wig, and he's doing this goofy ass smile. And you sort of realize that what he's doing is he's getting into character, because now he has to go pretend to be an artifact dealer, right? Which is his front. And it's so great because it shows that like he really has to work for this, right? He isn't just like, oh yeah, I'm just the master of 1,000 faces. Like, no. That's the disguise kit. He's rolling the D20. He's making the checks. He's putting it all on. I just love that scene.
I think the show is really good at demonstrating like why people are good or bad at the things they're like trying to do, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think there's often a time where a character does something on screen and you just have to accept that happened, right? Like they're all very believable. And this detail here where they show us Luthen getting into character for his front as an artifact dealer is just one of the perfect moments that illustrates like, oh, these are all fleshed out characters with like, real skills and specialties. And this is why the show does a lot of showing you things happen rather than just telling it to you. And it's just so great. I could talk for a while just about Luthen's like artifact dealer front. Cause like that, we need to like sit down and just look at all the stuff in his shop to see like how many different references you can find.
Oh, I bet there's dozens. Yeah.
The only obvious one is like the Gungan shield in the background, but I feel like some nerd got the lucky job of being like, hey, go find all the legend stuff and let's just put it in this shop real quick. So
there's really like 3 kind of plots running here during the Aldhani heist arc, right? You have all the stuff with Mon Mothma and Luthen, which sometimes are in the same scene, sometimes they're on their own. You have the heist, which we'll get to in a minute, and then you have Daedra Miro, right? And she is truly like, I think my favorite character in this show, as far as what they're able to do with her and just how intimidating she is. And she starts off a bit kind of like Cyril. She's definitely far more competent and in a higher position. She's inside the ISB, right? This is like the Imperial CIA essentially. And she, it starts off with this cool scene where Partagast, which is her major, I guess, it's like her superior in the ISB, he's like humiliating someone who said something stupid, and then he's just like, all right, I open up the question to the room, what do we do here? And she repeats some verbatim thing out of the book, the handbook, and he's just like, very good, Officer Daedra, or Officer Miro, like verbatim and wrong. And he just goes into his thing about how like you want security, call the Navy. Like we're a healthcare operation. We root out disease and we like cure it, and we have to do so before it spreads. And it really shows the way he thinks and the way the ISB thinks about, as Linus would say, fomenting happening throughout the galaxy. It's not just like we react. It's not some people are rabble rousing and we go and crush the riot, right? It's these guys are, even at the height of the Empire, before the rebellion is even formed, they're looking for any sign of anything that might, disrupt Imperial power.
Yeah, and I think the ruthlessness of the Empire is really on display here. This has been one of the troubles in the Disney era of Star Wars, is that the Empire is often depicted as kind of a joke. And this is the first time in a while where you realize just how sinister the Imperials can be, right? Partagaz's speech, he calls them healthcare providers. They are diagnosing an illness with the Empire. But he never talks about the citizens of the galaxy, right? Like, they're not treating the people. They're humanizing the Empire. This amorphous institution is the person that they are there to save, and the disease are all of the rebel scum trying to put an end to oppression throughout the galaxy.
What is our purpose, Legret?
On Vala 6?
I open the question to the room. What do we do in this building? Why are we here? Anyone?
We're here to further security objectives by collecting intelligence, providing useful analysis, and conducting effective covert action, sir.
Very good, Dedra. That is verbatim from the ISB mission statement and wrong. Security is an illusion. You want security? Call the Navy. Launch a regiment of troopers. We are healthcare providers. We treat sickness. We identify symptoms. We locate germs, whether they arise from within or have come from the outside. The longer we wait to identify a disorder, the harder it is to treat the disease. Do you understand my meaning, Legret?
Yes, sir.
Don't trouble yourself writing the memorandum. I'll reassign it.
It's really crazy how intimidating the ISB makes the Empire look without firing a single shot, without killing anyone. I mean, later on they do some more physical things, but in the first couple episodes, they're just like terrifying, and they haven't done anything physical, right? It's just the things they're talking about and how kind of devoted you see people like Dedra or Blevin, which is kind of her rival. It just really illustrates that, right? And the way the plot kind of takes us here is that Dedra has suspicions that the theft of the Starpath unit is part of a pattern. And that is, the theft happened from her sector, but the whole Ferrix thing went down in her kind of rival Blevin's sector, right? So there's this whole thing going on in this arc between those two where she's trying to like get access to the report and he won't let her. And he's basically like, you may want to steady the ladder before you climb it, is what he says in one scene, because he just thinks she's trying to leapfrog him and just suck up to the Major and everything. But it actually turns out that she's really fucking onto something, and she's super determined to figure it out. And it's like you said, Jeff, there's nothing that happens with characters in this where it's unearned. Like, you see why she discovers what she does, right? And she's working for it. She's theorizing. She's doubting herself. She's going through the entire like cycle of human emotions, ending up with, the gratification of I've figured this out.
It should be completely ridiculous for them to have made like a drama like this intense and this like gripping about Imperial bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. Like, they're literally fighting over who gets to run data blends at night on crime reports, and it's just completely enthralling. Austin, what was your take on the like ISB's meeting boardroom? Did that recall like openings of the original trilogy, or does it feel different to you?
No, I definitely think they're making an intentional callback to those kind of early episode 4 boardroom scenes, Vader choking out, the Imperial officers. I would argue that it's not just a Disney era problem that the Empire's always kind of felt underpowered and just not very intimidating. Vader has always felt intimidating, I think. But I think a lot of the Empire, for me at least, especially having watched it later on, like well past its prime, having, I wasn't born until 95, so I didn't probably see the episode 4, 5, 6 until like early 2000s. The Empire never came off as like super threatening to me. I mean, they were beaten by Ewoks. Like a lot of that never comes off super threatening, but they really do in here find that sweet spot of like, these guys are terrifying, even if they're not doing anything. Just their actions and their like persona, the way they conduct themselves is intimidating just by their very nature, which is really cool. I just think that's always been an Empire problem. Andor might be one of the only things that's ever really nailed it.
I mean, you're right about Andor. I forget that I like fast forwarded through every Ewok scene the 300 times I watched Return of the Jedi, right? And if you're just looking at like the rebel pilot body count, the Empire is incredibly scary.
Yeah, but it doesn't. I don't think it comes off that way, in my opinion, at least. I mean, yes, they destroy Alderaan, and that is an intense scene, and it has a lot more impact than like the sequel version of that. But at the same time, it is kind of like it happens, and then we don't really dwell on it or see much of it after that. Like the next time we see Leia, she's like making jokes about Luke being too short to be a stormtrooper. Like Alderaan never quite sits as hard as it maybe should. And so outside of that, I never find the Empire to be all that threatening until we get here. I mean, there's one scene, well, we'll get to that, I guess, because we need to talk about the heist.
Yeah. I mean, definitely.
Just real quick, because we were talking about this off air. There are some moments where it doesn't come through as well as it should. Like we see Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen brutally burned alive. And Luke's response is about the same as when he found out he couldn't go to Tashi Station and get his power converters. So there's sometimes just a little bit of, I think, like, I don't know if like portrayal of the Empire's cruelty and intimidation. It's definitely there, but yeah, nothing ever shows it the way Andor does, I think.
I also definitely think that like the original trilogy is going for a much different tone than Andor,
Sure.
right? I mean, obviously the original trilogy is much more about like this grand, fantastical adventure. It's a space opera. It's not trying to get into like a dark, gritty drama that's like a war story.
Sure, yeah,
like
it's the hero's journey.
And,
it's an adventure, right?
Right. Andor is definitely going for something a bit different.
So why don't we go ahead and get into the heist? And I actually want to start this off just out of curiosity. Austin, can you, without looking, name the heist crews? Like all the members of the heist crew?
All right, let me see. Hold on. We have Vel, who's kind of leading it. Cinta, who is her like lover, second in command, and like hard ass. We have Skeen, which is a great name.
Doesn't it just sound like him? It just sounds dirty like him.
It's such a good name for that guy. We have Nemik, the guy writing a manifesto. Mm-hmm. He's all in on the rebellion. And of course, Cassian, who's going by the name of Clem. And there's Tamarin, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's a former stormtrooper. And that's all I can recall. I don't know if there's somebody else that I'm missing. I guess there's there's like the captain, the Imperial, like the current Imperial captain, Gorn,
Lieutenant Gorn.
Yeah, I got him.
Yeah, there you go.
I think that's a statement to how strong these characters are. Like, sure, I rewatched it recently. I would have never remembered that if I hadn't rewatched it.
Right.
But even 2 weeks ago, a lot of shows I would have forgotten characters that ultimately didn't do a ton outside of their like small arc. They do leave an impression. They all have very distinct personalities, and they leave an impression throughout the 3 episodes that they're involved in.
So yeah, I absolutely love this arc, and part of it is what goes on in the first 2 episodes before the actual heist, right? Because there's just so much characterization of Cassian and these people in the rebellion, right? And you know, the very first point of conflict starts off in that Vel is talking to Luthen, who has landed on the planet, right? And he's dropping Cassian off, but he tells Cass to stay on the ship. And there's this fun scene where Cass kind of like eyes the controls for a second as if he's going to steal the ship and take off. But he doesn't. And Vel and Luthen are kind of in this intense thing because Vel's like, we've been out here camping in the woods and eating roots and mushrooms for like months. And you bring this guy on like a week before the heist and you're telling me they're going to call it off if, you know, we don't take him. Like, what is this shit? And you're paying him too. You know, she's pretty upset. So, you know, she ends up taking Cassian back to camp. And on the whole way over, she's saying like, listen, this was my idea. Luthen doesn't exist. The money you're being paid doesn't exist. Like, all of this is my idea. And that's how we're going to play this. And of course, I think we see our first instance of the intimidating TIE fighter flyover that they love to use throughout this arc. Because basically, like, they're sort of trying to blend in with the hill people of this planet. And so they're up in the mountains. They're living like nomads. And these TIEs are constantly flying over pretty much just to scare people, I think. I mean, they show them do the real close, deliberate drive-by a couple times, right? And they have to like hide the guns and stuff. So we get our first taste of that. And then we get to camp and we get to meet all these characters. Jeff, who was your favorite in this crew?
Ooh, that is a hard one to pick out. My favorite amongst them, I probably really liked. This is not on aesthetics. This is like, how good of a character in the story is. I think I liked Skeen a lot, and that's because of his first like deep interaction with Cassian, where he calls out Cassian, like realizing that shirtless Skeen is standing there with tattoos, and he realizes that Cassian knows what his tattoos mean. They're prison tattoos, right? And he calls him out for like, oh, I saw your eyes go right to them. You know what this is. And they have a little bonding moment, maybe a faux bonding moment, but a bonding moment over having been in the Imperial prison system already, and kind of like trying to take the measure of one another. It's definitely hard to pick a favorite. I also like Tamarin a lot, but he just has like less lines overall. So I think Skeen kind of takes the win here, especially as you see his interactions with Nemik. He's actually the very first person from the crew that we see after Vel and Cassian have met up is Nemik, who has fallen asleep at his post. And Skeen comes up and puts a knife to his neck and like, chastises him for like, man, you're lucky it was me. And if Vel finds out that you fell asleep on post, you're dead. And it just really like sets the tone of sort of like how kind of green some of the members are, particularly Nemik. He's like literally a kid writing a manifesto, but how like high stakes and serious this is.
So much of what we learn during this arc is Cassian having a little interaction with someone. So earlier on in this, he's talking to Vel, and he's basically asking about, where are all of the natives of Aldhani, right? Have they basically just all been killed off? And she's like, no, they weren't genocided. They were basically like tempted into abandoning their ways in order to go live life in the city. And, and in the last episode of this arc, there's this Imperial commander of the garrison who's talking about like the Aldhani go up to make this pilgrimage every year. And they just started building like shitty bars and restaurants on the way up there. And and he said, yeah, like, something stations. like 1,500 started, and now there's like 60 at the top. And so it's really interesting how they go into the detail of like, the Empire isn't always just showing up and murdering everyone. Sometimes they're just showing up and like sort of doing the whole frog in the boiled pot of water, right? And before you realize it, everything about your culture and people have been erased for new Imperial hyperspace lane or whatever.
One of the things I think the build up to the Aldhani heist does really well that I haven't seen in other Star Wars TV shows is the sense of scale you get for the planet. So when Luthen drops Andor off, him and Vel have to trek for a full day back to the camp where they're hiding out to, do this heist. You see the TIE fighters fly over, right? And they are like tiny specks off in the distance, and they get like right up into people's faces. And then later we have scenes at the Imperial base, the Aldhani garrison, where you have these like sweeping views of the mountains, and they're talking about the pilgrimage like up to their sacred lands. It just feels very deliberate. It feels very big, like it's a whole world with different places, whereas you'll see and other Star Wars TV shows, like in the amount of time it took us to cover like all the places in Aldhani, they would have gone through like 17 different planets.
Austin, remind me now, what is the object of the heist, and what are they using as cover to pull it off?
The heist, we are attempting to steal the Imperial payroll for an entire sector. Which I don't know if they really define how big a sector is, but it's a lot of money. It's like 80 million credits or something like that. And we're using the farmhand cover to get there, and then we're going to use the event called the Eye that passes over Aldhani every, I don't remember how often.
3 years.
3 years, thank you. Every 3 years, there's this event called the Eye, where like this really cool, like majestic, it's like a meteor shower kind of in the sky that passes over this planet, and it's like chaos up in the sky. So they're gonna steal this while all the Imperials are watching this really cool event, and all the like locals are having their festival. And they're going to get up into this meteor shower with a route that has been like pathed out by, I think Nemik's pathed out this route. and they're going to escape in the cover of this meteor shower, which is really cool. You were talking about the setup for this episode, or like the two setup episodes, and really this whole show is like 2 setup episodes, big payoff episode. 2 setup episodes, big payoff episode. And it kind of gets mixed up a little bit at the end, but in a way it doesn't. I think the setup for this one works a lot better than the setup for episodes 1 and 2, in my opinion. I like the setup 4 and 5 a lot more. I love interacting with the crew, getting the plan, figuring out the plan, like training for the plan, the interactions that Cass has with everybody, to kind of learn everybody's different traits and like figure out what makes everybody tick. All of that stuff works really well for me. And the payoff is awesome, but the setup does work a lot better here than I think it does in the first arc.
Yeah, Cassian spending time in the camp with the rebels, right? The 5 of them that are hiding out in the woods really does a lot to get you interested in these different characters. They've all got different backgrounds. They all have different motivations for wanting to fight the Empire, whether they're an ex-stormtrooper, someone whose brother was killed, or if they're an Imperial lieutenant who, after 7 years of atrocities, finally decides that he should grow a conscience. It's just really fun to figure out how they tick, like Austin said. And then there's this great dynamic where Cassian is the new guy, and none of them trust him. This is why Vel was so upset that Luthen forced him into the plan. And so you can see them sort of slowly unveil the plan to Cassian, like trying to only bring him in where necessary for, operational security or whatever. And then you can see as the curtain comes back and Cassian starts to understand what he's gotten himself involved in, he starts to lose it a few times. He's like, y'all are crazy. What do you mean, like, y'all haven't figured out the weight of the cruisers so that we could launch our escape out of the garrison? What were you going to do if I wasn't here? And so it really makes it clear to the viewer, like, A, how desperate of a situation they're in, and B, like, just how well Luthen is putting it together, and just like what, Vel was in between a rock and a hard place. Like, she needed to make last minute changes because this wasn't going to come together unless they added someone like Cassian.
Yeah, they do a great job showing how Cassian is actually really needed for this. There's this other great scene where they're practicing the little patrol march. Cassian's like, hey, me and you, Tamara, we should switch sides. Tamara's just like, yeah, how about you sit here for a couple days before you just start giving orders? And then Vel's just like, why? Like, why do you want to switch sides? He's like, well, because you're left-handed. You should be on this side. And Vel's just like, what am I? It's like, right-handed. What is Cinta? And he just goes through every single person. And you realize that, like, Cassian is the most observant motherfucker in the entire galaxy. And he's just so intentional in everything he does. And he's always looking around him. He's always noting things. He does, get himself in trouble a couple times by acting brash. But it's like, he is so committed to this heist and it working because he knows, like, in order for him to live, it has to work. So even if nothing else is in his heart at this point, we can maybe say it's the money, you can say it's the rebellion, but ultimately it's just survival. And he wants to commit himself fully to this, and he's not going half-assed, like, at all.
This is just another case of Cassian, like, doing something well, which earns him trust, right? This is like the crew realizing that, like, okay, we're not just going to listen to you because, like, everyone gets a voice or whatever, right? Like, you are demonstrating competency, and that earns you respect. Which I guess is always something good to see in a character.
Before we move on to the climax of the heist, which is awesome, I do want to say that during this whole arc, we're of course seeing other things happen in the rest of the galaxy, right? We have our other characters. So we've talked about Daedra a little bit. We've talked about Mon Mothma and Luthen in the artifact shop, but we're also seeing the aftermath of Cyril and his just failure as acting commander of the Primor Security Force. And so there's this great meeting, Blevin, who I mentioned earlier at the ISB, that's his sector. So he's there to deal with it. And he's like bitching them all out and telling them that, this is going to be coming under like direct control. And the captain's like, I've had nothing to do with this. And Blevin says, precisely, it took the combined ingredients of idiocy, ineptitude, and total disengagement for this farce to have reached the full apex of incredulous disaster. I love the way the ISB talks. It's like, they're just like posh British. It's great. And it's just awesome scene because he even tells Cyril something like, But look, you can rest assured knowing no one's going to succeed you. Like, you are the last commander of Pre-Mor because it's gone. It's dissolved. This is Imperial control now. And he ends up going back to his like mother's apartment, who just is this like stereotypical overbearing mother. And the conversations they have are so good and they're so funny because they're just like so biting. And you can very clearly tell that like, yeah, you know, it's a mother and son, but their relationship is not the best. And they have no problem making that known with little snips in between their teeth. Oh, it's so good.
And that contrasts entirely to every time Cassian goes home and sees his mother. And, you know, Cassian is also one to go long stints without seeing his family, or it's sort of implied there. And so once again, I think I'm coming around to the idea that Cyril is just like the inverse of Cassian as a character. You get to see Cyril's failures and his toxic relationship with his mother. And meanwhile, we're watching Cassian's successes and like how much his mom loves him despite his shortcomings. So yeah, I don't know. This is not the podcast to unpack family trauma, but maybe this is the TV show for it.
In the world of language arts education, I believe those are character foils, correct? That is
yeah, something along those lines.
So then we get to the actual heist, right? And there's so many little moments leading up to it that are awesome. There's one where Lieutenant Gorn is back on base and he's talking to the guys who are going to be watching the garrison, like the vault, overnight during the eye. And they're basically coming up to him like, sir, we just want to say that like we think morale would be better served if we had, you know, minimum security down here. And he plays it off like he's very reluctant to do this. And he's like, all right, well, but when I come back down here, this better be like, you know, passing full inspection, yada, yada. And he basically makes it seem like he's reluctantly giving his guys the night off. But then as he walks toward the camera, there's just this like shit-eating grin that comes on his face because he realizes
he's like
perfect. Yeah, I have gotten most of the armed troops out of there for our assault.
It's all coming together.
There was a moment earlier where Nemik's kind of nervous and Cassian says like don't worry, you know, the adrenaline will kick in. And then when they're first lined up in the little squad on base, he just kind of leans over to Cassian and he's like, you're right, like I'm so excited. And there's all these little moments like that. Do you guys remember any that really stuck out to you during the heist?
During the heist itself, I did really enjoy Nemik's sideline there. So once they get rolling onto the heist, right, like they split up a little bit. There is the little Imperial Guard squad that is Nemik, Tamarin, Cassian, and Skeen, and then Cinta and Vel are like off by themselves, right? Because they have a different part of the mission to break into the garrison. And there is this moment, there's a final decision, a final go or no go call that happens during the heist. Vel and Cinta are like in an overlook position. They've started jamming Imperial comms, and now they have to decide, are they all going to flee and go home? Are they going to go through with it? And she hesitates, and Tamarin keeps calling her like, are you there? Are we ready to go? And like Cinta like looks deep at her eyes and gets her to commit, and it's just such a great character.
Yeah, she's like, you're stalling.
Yes, yeah. She calls her out. She knows what she's doing. And it's just such a great moment when like Vel rises to the occasion and leads and says, go.
I think my favorite moment of the heist, if we're looking at the heist as a whole, is probably when the plans, like once they get into the garrison, right, they successfully, they take the commandant who's kind of leading this facility. They take his family hostage and like force him to open the vault. And we see him being like we get this moment where the guards that Vel and Cinta like tried to distract, and they tried to take out the radios and distract all these guards. They've realized like something is amiss, and they have come down to the vault to figure out what's going on. And the commandant, who is now also being held hostage and like forced to help load the money into the ship, their escape ship, he's like faced with this moment where he's confronted with his failure in this moment of like, I'm letting this happen, and he has a heart attack and dies, and it's just kind of amazing. It is like, and it causes the entire plan to unravel. Yeah, because Gorn can't use him anymore as like Gorn can't use him anymore as a voice of authority. He just dies, and it's like, well, this whole plan's gone to shit.
Right, and like you might think that's like some kind of weird twist, but it's not. Like, he is an old, out of shape angry man who's being forced to do hard labor. They literally, like, part of the heist is making the Imperial guards load up their escape trawler with the cash,
which is so good.
It's so good. I love that Star Wars money is still like hard currency. It's so good. And literally, this out of shape angry man doing hard labor is suddenly confronted with the most stressful moment of his life, which is this confrontation between the loyal troops and the treacherous ones, and it just kills him.
And it's so interesting because, like, he just thinks he has it so made, and like every time you see his interactions with his family, he's just like, I am in charge, I'm the leader, the Aldani people are nothing to me, like, this whole garrison is mine, I run it flawlessly. Like, he has such a confidence and an arrogance, and he's just like, it's kind of a subtle, he's not like a dick outwardly, I guess. Well, sometimes he is, but it's in this moment where it's like, nah, dude, you're actually just kind of terrible.
Yep.
Like you cannot do anything.
He's like almost a caricature of like a pompous, medieval king, like this fat guy who has unearned authority, who oppresses people and bosses folks around. And then, he's just so angry over the sheer audacity of these people rebelling against him that it ends up killing him. It's an incredible moment.
It's a great scene.
There's an unlimited number of good scenes in this arc, so we'll have to move on eventually. But a couple.
I'd say just land on your favorite. You got it.
There's a couple I want to mention before we move on because I think they're pretty important, and I can't believe we forgot one. So there's the one where so basically Luthen gives Cassian a bit of a down payment. It's like this Kyber crystal necklace, and Cassian's kind of hiding it, under his shirt. This whole lead up to the heist, and one of the many times Skeen sneaks up on him and steals his stuff. He like cuts the necklace off of him and he's just like, what is this? Like, why do you have this? Like, who would bring this to a heist? Like, this is crazy. And Vel kind of like gets them all to simmer down and move on. But Cassian decides that he actually has to like kind of bring this up. So, he's like, I'm being paid. Like, is that what you want to hear? Like, I don't want to be looking over my shoulder tomorrow. And of course the whole crew feels like betrayed. But the best part is Cassian's basically like, when Skeen is saying, like, you should have told us days ago, like, this is unacceptable, Cassian's like, it just would have been something else. Like, you guys are scared. Like, how do you know you're not scared? He's like, of course I'm scared. But there's a difference between being scared and losing your nerve. Like, if you want to call this off, call it off. Don't use me as an excuse. I'm here. I'm ready to go. Like, me being paid doesn't change anything. If you guys, want to quit, it's because you wanted to quit the whole time. And it's a fantastic scene.
Maybe you're the one that's afraid.
Of course I'm afraid. But there's a difference between fear and losing your nerve. You want out of this. Make a choice. Don't use me as an excuse.
Yeah, I keep talking about the intentionality of the show, and a lot of that comes from like the deliberate choices that characters make. Like Cassian could have just let things continue to kind of simmer and ignore it, but he knew he had to make a decision there that would bring the crew together, and it was outing himself as a mercenary. And he decided to own that choice, make that choice, and then let the consequences play out. They're either going to call it off and they're all screwed and who knows what happens, or they're going to get past it and they're going to decide to do the mission. And it's the fact that Cassian wants to make everyone make that choice that just makes him such a like naturally competent character.
There's another great scene where, like Austin, you were saying, they first take over the headquarters and they have his family at gunpoint and everything. And Vel's basically saying, like, all right, we get what we want or everyone dies. Like, this goes exactly the way we want to or you'll never see your family again. And the guy says, oh, you're just going to kill us anyway. And Vel looks at him and says, oh, because that's what you would do, right? And she makes it clear, no, if we get what we want, everyone lives. We're not like you guys. And I love that because there's definitely a danger in doing a show like this where you kind of both sides, the Empire and the Rebellion, a little too much. And I think the show does a very good job of showing where those clear lines are. Maybe there aren't for characters like Luthen. Maybe he's in too deep to be able to not have to, as he calls it, use the tools of his enemies against him, right? But for the rest of the characters, they are trying to ultimately distinguish themselves from what they're fighting.
I agree. I think that's a really powerful depiction of the difference between the Rebellion and the Empire. And I think we do see some scenes with, like, especially like Luthen and Saw and like some of the stuff we see later in the story that blur those lines a little bit. But at least for Vel, and that could come from like her connection to Mon Mothma, who's always been kind of a character who does good, right? Like, she has a line.
You're coming with us. Everyone else stays here. Your comms have been disabled. Ours are working. If you don't help us, your family will die. If you slow us down, if you stall, if you argue, if you play us in any way, they will die.
You kill us anyway.
Because that's what you do, right? No. If we get what we came for, everyone walks away. But if we go down, you're right there with us.
14 minutes.
Move.
Yeah, and look, Nemik's writing a manifesto. Tamarin's an ex-stormtrooper, and stormtroopers murdered since his family. There's so many things going on here we could talk about all day. But, let's go ahead and move on, though, because we talked about the guy having the heart attack. So this makes the plan fall apart. Gorn is, instantly shot. Tamarin shot a few moments later. They get the stuff into the freighter, and they take off. And in a beautiful scene of symbolism, the money flies back. The stacks of credits flies back as they take off, and it crushes Nemik in the back of the ship. And since he is a pseudo-communist, Jeff, you were pointing out, that's the guy who gets literally crushed under the weight of money, right?
It's so poetic. On top of that, all of them had a problem with Cassian being a mercenary and doing it for the money. And in fact, Nemik, rewrites a whole passage, right? He talks about being up all night before the heist, writing about what are the purpose of mercenaries during the revolution. And then Nemik gets crushed by a literal ton of cash.
It's so wonderfully done. And it's because Cassian takes off on the ship the way he does. I mean, he doesn't have much of a choice, but ultimately it was the jump off of the freighter that caused the money to fly back and hit him, right? So there's some sort of, maybe something going on there where it's Cassian's kind of part of that. I don't know if they're trying to say something with that, but I did find it interesting that Cassian's kind of the catalyst there.
Yeah. There's a scene where they all try and brace and they can't, right? They have unsecured cargo. Always secure your cargo, folks, before you take off.
Then as the heist winds up, we have a super interesting scene where Vel's basically saying we can't stop to take care of Nemik. We have to get to the objective point. We have to make this drop off. It's too important. And Skeen is basically calling her heartless and saying, no, we have to stop. And for a moment, you're actually persuaded into thinking that Skeen might actually care about more than revenge, as I think he was basically talking about earlier in the heist, right? That he actually cares about Nemik. But then, Austin, what happens when they land that shows that not so much?
Well, you see, Skeen decides he wants to take the money and run, split it with Cassian, leave Vel and Nemik to fend for themselves. If Nemik dies, so be it. And there's a great line there where he says something along the lines of, Cassian basically asks him, what happened to being a rebel? And he was like, oh, I'm a rebel. It's just not the way you think I am. I'm all in it for myself. And he wants to take the money and run. And Cassian just, I guess out of a sense of loyalty that he's formed with his crew, just takes him out, shoots him, kills him, and then runs in there and is like, I'm taking my cut of the money. Skeen's dead. He's trying to leave with all your money. So I solved that problem for you.
Yeah, I think it's one of the defining moments that tries to show that while Cassian is a liar and a thief and pushes the boundaries of all of his relationships, he is at least a sincerely loyal person who does care about the promises he makes. Skeen completely misreads him as just another scumbag who's looking to crawl his way out of the hole he was born in, just like Skeen is. And Cassian makes another deliberate choice that is not who I am and shoots Skeen dead.
Yeah, just bang.
And he really almost even looks like he can't believe he did it either at first. But it was really just, like you guys were saying, just a confluence of so many things coming together. And Cassian just having this reaction of no, I absolutely did not do all of that. And we did not spend all this time together the last couple months for this to be the end of it. And it's just so unacceptable to him. I mean, it's honor among thieves to him. And Skeen has none whatsoever.
Before we move on, I just want to call out the Aldhani space chase scene, right? When they fly through the eye. I have never seen TIE fighters look that freaking cool. They still blow up. All TIE fighters have to blow up, right?
Right, always.
But there's the scene where they're scrambling the TIE fighters at the airbase, and you see like the fighter pilots drop into the cockpits of the TIE fighters and like start adjusting their dials and stuff. And I love every dollar they spent on that scene. It is amazing, and I could watch that all day.
The Imperial tech is awesome. I mean, and like you were talking about everything being earned, the guards show up at the end not just as a random plot device, but because they show 3 times the guy in the observation tower trying to figure out why the hell the communications are jammed. And he eventually finds the one channel they're talking on. And he's like, oh shit, they're robbing us. Like, it's so good. Everything about the heist scene from beginning to end is good. There's so many things we didn't even talk about here. A+, love this arc so much.
Honestly, I know we said earlier, watch 3 episodes, and if you don't like it, you won't like it. But you know what? Maybe watch 6 episodes. And then if you don't like the heist scene, then
you might as well finish the last 6 because there's only 6 left. So
you always will get to the end of the prison and then the end of the
Speaking of the prison, though, I think that's my favorite arc. So
after this, we get so it's weird, and you were kind of alluding to this earlier, Austin. Episode 7 is a little more of like some stuff is happening on Ferrix. We see some more characters there. Cassian's basically trying to lay low on this like tourism planet. And it's really episodes, 8, 9, and 10 that compose the prison arc. But it starts off with, so he's gone back home with the money that he took, because he took just enough to get back home, and then he said he's gonna, fly him and Maarva out somewhere. And of course, Maarva's just like, oh, we'll talk about it in the morning, which is really her way of saying like, I'm not leaving, dude. I'm like 105. Like, what are you talking about?
Right. I'm not leaving. I'm 105, and you didn't see that thing that happened on Aldhani, did you? Like, I'm a rebel now. Maarva's very like bought into rebellion at this point. I need to stay here because I'm part of something now. Like I'm basically alluding to like being a rebel and fighting the Empire herself.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, okay. Maarva's all about being a rebel. He goes and checks up on Bix, and they have a little bit of an argument, and he's talking about making good on his debts and stuff. And then...
Seven is such a weird episode to me because I think it almost completes the like 11 and 12. It's like 7, 11, and 12 are kind of an arc because a lot of the stuff that happens in 7 sets up for stuff that comes in 11 and 12.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting where like that almost works as like the return to Ferrix arc, but it's like split between the prison arc in between it. So it's kind of interesting how that's paced out to me.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, Austin. It 100% is, right? Like 7 would lead right into 11 and 12, but, before Andor can return to Ferrix again.
Before that could happen.
The Empire catches up to him.
There's this fantastic scene in 7 when he's talking to Maarva, and she says something along the lines of like, just take your money and go find peace. Like, I'm not judging you. We just all have different paths to walk. And he's like, I'll never find peace. I'll be worried about you all the time. And she says, that's just love. Nothing you can do about that. Which is, oh my God, I was like in tears all 3 times I heard it. And it's just such a beautifully written line. Like, it's so simple, but it's almost like, has no one else ever said this in a movie before? It almost seems too obvious, but it's so fucking good. And it really shows the connection they have. And they're both so sad about what they both know is inevitable at this point.
And so that inevitable thing is Cassian has to leave. He can't stay on Ferrix. It's obviously too hot. He has all this money and he wants to escape somewhere and get away from the Empire. So he goes to do that on this planet called Neomos, which I guess is a little bit like Space Barcelona, but it's great, right? Like it's a seaside.
Cool design. Like I like the space beach. It's like Malibu kind of.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is obviously like a seaside resort town, but it feels very Star Wars. It looks like it's in a galaxy far, far away. And you've even got like some little cameos of like these really weird looking aliens and stuff too. Just like the opening shot of an alien like slurping down, I don't know, some alcoholic drink or something. It's pretty funny.
This show had more aliens than I remember it. None of them are really in important roles, but there's a lot more just like appearances of aliens than I thought there were.
Yeah, they're very much like dress setting, right? Like they're almost part of like the set as opposed to characters in the show. But
it's just trying to remind you that this is Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah, Absolutely. I mean, it feels good. It looks great. It's a little bit reminiscent of the cantina scene, but this isn't Mos Eisley. This is a very upscale resort town, right? And so Cassian has done that. He's run away from the Empire. He's laying low, just off on his own, shacking up with some girl in a rented room, right? And they have this great little back and forth about needing some more pizzos, the green ones specifically. And Cassian goes out to the store. And so, minding his own business, strolling around this resort planet, a bunch of dudes are running along the beach, apparently causing a ruckus to the point of where the stormtroopers are trying to chase them down. Cassian is confused. He looks afraid. He kind of jogs the rest of the way to the store and gets confronted by a shore trooper who's just like, "Hey, are you part of it?
What Cassian's you running like, for?
Yeah, you looking real scared there, boy." And so, like, he gets arrested by the Empire just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. He literally pulled off the Aldani heist, but he gets arrested for moving too quickly.
For walking.
Yeah.
He gets arrested for walking.
Cassian's first interaction with one of those Imperial security droids. I don't know what model they are. They are the KX series, I guess, which we first saw in Rogue One. And so his first interaction with one of these droids is the droid trying to choke him to death. So Cassian gets arrested. He appears in front of an Imperial judge. The courtroom is like well run, but a little chaotic. And this judge is just going through sentencing directives. This entire time, Cassian is confused. He's demanding like, what is going on? Saying over and over again, I'm just a tourist. He gets in front of this judge and he's been caused with like disrupting the peace.
Like 4 charges.
Yeah. She routinely lists off like 4 different charges for, destroying Imperial property and fomenting. Did she use the word fomenting? It had that vibe.
I don't think so, but it would have been a good callback.
But just generally like, disrupting the Empire and threatening the security of the Empire. She shakes her head. She says, "Oh, this used to be just a 6-month sentence," and then declares 6 years, stamps his sentencing card, and Cassian is sentenced to 6 years in an Imperial prison.
I love the little detail about the 6 months to 6 year thing, because it's what you were talking about earlier, Jeff. No matter how justified and unwittingly or not, his actions always come back to him. Mm-hmm, and so it is the Aldani heist that has set off this new series of legislation where they're like increasing sentences and they're doing all this, Patriot Act level stuff because of this terrorist attack. And so if Cassian had gotten arrested for walking while rebel, a few weeks earlier, it would have been 6 weeks. But again, he's in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the things that he did that he thought were totally unrelated to this are now coming back to, I guess maybe haunt's not the right word. I don't think he necessarily regrets it, but in this moment, he probably regrets a little bit.
Yeah, I think what this really sets up is how oppressive authoritarian systems become inescapable, right? And that's what Maarva was trying to tell him. I'm going to stand up and fight. I am a rebel because you can't escape them. Cassian literally tries to escape them and fails just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I really love this scene because it's the right level of remix, right? Like, we all know what a court looks like. We know what a trial is. We know what trumped up charges are, and it just feels very believable that the fascist police state that is the Empire has now dialed up the stakes and is sending people away to prison for years on trumped up charges. So from there, Cassian gets dragged away to a transport where he's asked for his name and planet of birth, Keef Gergo.
And that name is Keef Gergo. Oh, dang it.
I'm sorry.
I was trying to come in there and prove that I remembered his name. God dang it. Keef Gergo. Gargo? Something like that.
Gergo. Bonus points if you remember the planet.
Ooh, do not remember.
Yeah, I got no fucking idea either. I just
all right, well, great.
So
gotta rewatch again. It sounds like
Cassian is brought out to this landing platform where there are 3 different transports, and they're dividing up all the guards. And he's sent on the one for Narkina 5. He's like, Narkina 5, what is that?
Like,
Get
move
set
it.
on this. Yeah. Yeah. This whole time, the guards are throwing around the prisoners, shoving them onto transports. And in what feels like 2 hours, Cassian has gone from a tourist enjoying the beach to on his way to an Imperial prison world.
There's this whole prison thing that happens, right? And maybe before we get to that, we'll just talk about some of the other stuff happening during this arc so we can focus on the prison break all at once, because it truly is, I think, worthy of being focused on all at once. So some of the other things that are happening here, right? We have Daedra is continuing to work her way up the ranks, and she's trying to figure all these things out that are happening. You know, at this point, she's on to something, right? She knows that it's more, that this Aldani heist is probably connected to this rebel activity. Like, there can really be no doubt about that. I mean, I think the guy that's even above Partagast at this point is that, like, we're passing all these new rules and whatnot. The ISB is stepping up this and that. And she actually hates this because she's like, oh my God, we're tipping our hand. We're making it look like we're panicking, et cetera, et cetera. Like, we need to play this smarter. And also this whole time, you know, Cyril has not forgotten about Cassian one bit.
No, he has a mission. My man is on a vendetta against Cassian.
Yeah, and he is working at what's like the Imperial Standards Bureau in the like fuel purity department. His uncle or something has gotten him like a desk job because he was basically unemployable after his Ferrex incident, right? Well, this dude is just sending constant information requests for Cassian Andor. First saying that, like, oh, he was a guy that stole this on this planet. Or he's a guy that punched someone. Just making up shit with his name to try to find out
information. He was a missing fuel purity specialist. We got to find those guys.
Yeah, exactly. I just love the detail there. Fuel purity. Like, who even came up with that? And of course, like, Daedra gets wind of this, right? And so this arc has a couple different scenes with Daedra and Cyril where she's basically like trying to interrogate him, like, what the hell are you doing this for? And then she finds out that he never read Blevins' report. So she's like, okay, there might have been more going on during all that. And eventually she gets him to read the report, and he can't really offer up much information. At best, he can say, like, I heard the guy talk. I could tell you what he sounds like. And she's just like, all right, look, I'm going to put in a good word for you. Just drop this. And this is when he goes on his little, I was a damn good security deputy. Like, I solved a double murder in 2 days. Overly ambitious, yes. And he's just like, she's like, okay, man, I got a meeting to get to. And he keeps just doing this. And it's so funny because his demeanor and his tone and the words he used kind of feel like that teacher's pet kind of thing, like the try hard. And she's not, she has all of that ambition, but she's just so much better at channeling it. And she just walks right up to him and she's like, if you keep going on this, I'm not going to be the person you're talking to next, right? Implying that whoever it is, you are not going to fucking like this.
Can one ever be too aggressive in preserving order? I didn't deserve what happened.
I wish you luck. I'm running late.
It's clear you need Andor in order to find his partner.
It's also clear that whatever this is more important than the death of 2 corporate security guards. It could be a valuable asset going forward.
Raise the alarm one more time, and it won't be me you're speaking to. Forget this happened.
The scenes of, so this is also the arc, I think, when Daedra is working her way up the Imperial Security Bureau, right? This is where she gets the sector for Ferrex assigned to herself out from under Blevin.
Yes.
And so the last time we were talking about the ISB, Blevin and Daedra were kind of sparring back and forth, arguing about who should have access to what data, and Miro kind of gets advice from her boss that's like, hey, you know, I like what you're doing, but like you have to play the game and play the game better. And she does. And she gets herself access to Blevin's files. She shows them up in front of the rest of the ISB board and gets a major presentation where she is talking directly to the head of the ISB. A guy whose like first introduction to us is him opening with, last night I spoke to Emperor Palpatine and blah, 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 blah. And so she is now directly pitching to a man who has an ear to the Emperor about her belief in the disease and the problem afflicting the Empire. And she is thoroughly convinced that the rebel activity is organized. These crimes aren't random. And she goes about and gets a suspect, right, Axis, and starts on her path to setting up the scenes at the end of the series where she has taken over Ferrix and she is hunting for Andor.
Speaking of Axis, I think my favorite sections here that you know, apart from the prison scenes, are the ones with Luthen and Saw.
Yeah.
I love the Saw cameo here. We see him originally in Clone Wars, again in Rebels, again in Rogue One. Like, Saw has not been a recurring character, but I love seeing Luthen and Saw kind of compare ideologies, and like they're almost the same, but just slightly different. And I love the expanding of the Rebel network and seeing that like it's not all one group. There's, you know, Anton Krieger's group, and there's Saw's group, and there's Luthen's group, and he's kind of working with Mon Mothma, but you know, they're all a little bit different. And you kind of see that even with the ISB. I think they mention a couple other like random names that are like other rebel groups that they believe exist. And it's like, I love how in the original trilogy, it always feels like it's just one big group. And it probably is by that time, right? I mean, it kind of all comes together.
Yeah,
but
they are the Rebel Alliance at that point, right? So it's
yes,
the alliance
exactly.
of rebel groups, yeah.
Right, but here we are not yet at alliance levels. We are very much at like little pockets of resistance, and I love seeing how all that comes together. And I love Luthen talking to Saw and kind of comparing those ideologies and how all that plays out.
There is so much world building done in these scenes between, you know, Andor being in prison, where Luthen like really builds the backdrop of what led up to the Rebel Alliance, exactly like we were talking about. There are so many disparate groups there. There are 6 or 7 like different like named characters who have no scenes or lines like in the show, right? Like Antor Krieger becomes a fixation of the ISB. And he is nothing more than like a hologram in one scene of the show.
Like, we never see him.
Yeah.
Like he just has a face that in a hologram.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just so cool to watch Luthen make these clandestine dealings, to see what are presumably some of the first X-Wings that are part of the Alliance fleet, and just see the interacting dynamics and what it takes to set up a guerrilla rebel network, right?
Yeah, and like Luthen trading his equipment with Saw, and like, I have information, you have equipment that I need, like, let's work out a deal, stuff like that. Like seeing all those little dealings, and Mon Mothma getting involved, and it's like, hey, we need your money. And she's like, well, I can't get to my money. And it's like, well, you better figure it out, because like we need it. Like it's so interesting seeing all this stuff build up.
Yeah, then there's the whole story with her, Mon Mothma, where she's basically like trying to talk to one of her childhood friends from Chandrilla, is that what we call it? And
yes,
you know, he has a lot of money too, and she's basically like talking about how she's trying to set up some charitable thing, and he says something along the lines of, well, you know, I've done more than just grow weary of the Empire. Like, you might find that my politics are a little too much for your taste. And she just has this grin on her face, like, "Oh, baby, like this is, you know, exactly what I
you have no idea."
Yeah, she literally says, like, "Thank you, Tay. You have set me free."
Yeah, and they talk for a little more, and then she kind of starts to get into some of the details, and then he's kind of giving her this look, and then, you know, she repeats it back to him, like, "Well, perhaps my politics have just become a bit too much for your taste." And you know, it's
such a good retort in that moment.
It's so great. I love every scene with Mon Mothma.
She is so cool, and it's like, man, it took you long enough to make her as cool as she should be.
They end up devising a plan where they're going to get the money from a, you know, what she calls a thug on, he's not a banker, he's a thug named Davos Skolden, I think is his name.
Yeah, his last name is definitely Skolden, which sounds
amazing.
Okay. Little on the nose, but we'll take it.
Again, a lot like Skeen, I think, right? Like you understand what it's trying to convey.
It's a lie. The Mon Mothma people think they know. It's a lie. It's a projection. It's a front.
I've learnt from Palpatine. I show you the stone in my hand, you miss the knife at your throat.
And then that ends up leading us down somewhere where we'll get into in the next arc, where I think all of those consequences for her trying to find the money really rear their head, right? Was there anything else before we get into the prison scene? I'll save Luthen's epic monologue for right afterwards.
I think the only other thing worth mentioning is the Bix interrogation in episode 9.
Oh, yes. Maarva's dying, and Bix is trying to get word to Cassian. So she goes to the shop where she's been sending the signal in the past to Luthen, and the guy who's running the shop is like, we haven't used it in a month. Like, it's risky. You know, the Imperials took over the planet, Bix. And she's like, no, please, one more time. So she sends that out. They intercept it. There's actually a cool scene where Clea, which is Luthen's assistant, intercepts the message too in their little artifact shop. And she basically has to convince Luthen to like shut down the Ferrex signal. Like, this is no longer worth the risk. And that ends up getting them on Bix's trail. And she is brought in for interrogation.
So yeah, I absolutely love, again, like a character doing something risky and then having them pay the price for it, which is that the Empire finds Bix. And it's only kind of find, right? Like, she's like out in a crowd. They are arresting someone else. They're arresting a shop owner named Pac, whose son features later in the series too. And she's just standing around like outside, and they are now aware that like Bix needs to come in for questioning, and an Imperial spots him, and Brazo tries to be a bro again and like slow down the Empire so that she can get away. But she fails. They bring Bix in for questioning, and Dedra Meero herself shows up to do the interrogation. And we've all seen these scenes before, right? Like the evil bad guy straps a character into a chair and laughs maniacally as they're like, oh, we're going to pull your fingernails out to get information out of you. And this is Star Wars' take on that. And it's just done so well. It's not cheesy. It's not comical. It is genuinely sinister when Meero gets up into Bix's face and explains that she's going to tell her everything she wants to hear. She tries to sort of play the good cop with Bix and act like, oh, if you cooperate, maybe we won't have to do terrible things to you. And then Bix like calls her on it. And she's like, you know, how are you ever gonna like, how do I know that you're gonna believe me? Like, you're not going to. And Meero's just like, you're right. I won't.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah, and then proceed to torture, and like one of the most menacing torture scenes ever.
Yeah, she brings along a literal evil doctor, right? His name is Dr. Gorst. He looks like a Nazi doctor. He is there to extract information from you. And he has this absolutely unhinged explanation of the torture device they're going to put on her head. It is the recordings of a sentient species on some remote moon that the Empire murdered for their planet's resources, and they happen to record the sounds of murdering the men, women, and children of that planet. And as it turns out, it is psychologically torturous for humans to listen to it. So they make her. Yeah. I
was gonna say, remember when I said the Empire comes off as comically evil sometimes? This is kind of what I mean. This is like unhinged, like evil, like this is like mwahaha, I am evil type shit.
The thing is though that the show is like shot so well, and we've taken everything so seriously so far that I find him completely believable. Like I find the character extremely convincing, and it's not that far away from real life torture scenes that different countries have done to people held in black sites.
Dude, he's grinning the entire time he's explaining it, like the way we have been recording this episode. I mean, he is so thrilled by, he's like, not only do I get to do this, but I get to explain it to you too. Like, this is the best day of my life.
Right. And Bix's scream at the end is like, woo. It is so, it's like, it makes you genuinely uncomfortable, where you're like, I mean, obviously you don't feel like you're being tortured, but like you feel the reaction as like, yikes.
Yeah, the way Gorst describes it is a choral agonizing plead, in that specifically the track that they have is that of children dying, and that they've modified it even further. And yeah, they put it on her face, like you were saying, Austin, the scene's so good. Like, they zoom the camera up real close on her face, and there's this headset that started playing, and the sound is totally cut out of the scene, right? And all you can hear is her breathing, and it's just her starting to look more and more terrified before just letting out this like blood-curdling scream, and then the camera pans outside the room as the door like slams shut.
Great scene, absolutely terrifying. Yeah, good stuff.
It's the most singularly like terrifying moment I've ever seen from the Empire.
Yeah, and it's just so fitting. It's like not only is this like a crazy torture we've developed, but it's the result of us just like finding a crazy mysterious race that sings when they die and just killing all of them. So it's,
right,
we did,
evil.
We did a little bit of science on our atrocity, and now we have this great torture technique. Aren't you excited to bear witness to our greatness? So
evil. Anyway, the prison.
Yeah. So the very first thing that happens when they get to the prison, right? You see this ship that he's got it boarded on flying in. You tell, okay, this is a prison in like the middle of a lake or ocean or something, right? Huge body of water.
Kind of like the Raft. Kind of like Marvel's
or like
the Raft.
And
also that, yes.
And so they land and they get off, and you'll sort of notice that like none of them are really in handcuffs or anything, and the guards don't have any weapons. And Jeff, what happens when he goes to explain why they don't need any of those things?
Well, you see, their floor is made of a tungsten alloy, and the thing is about this prison is wired throughout all of it are like electric floors. Right. So the guard helpfully explains that you need to be on program at all times, which means put your hands behind your head, looking straight ahead. Yeah. And face forward at attention. And when you are not on program, this is what'll happen. And he presses a little button, and all 6 of the prisoners like drop into the most ridiculous, like contorted agony poses.
Harrowing. The grotesque positions their bodies fall into immediately is like, what?
And you can see you can bear witness to the greatness of Imperial engineering, where they can lightly staff this prison because they've come with such innovative ways to ensure compliance while you pay your debt to the Empire.
That was something I'd totally forgotten until I watched it. This third watch through is they're constantly saying they're understaffed. Yeah, it's definitely like, in my mind, it was like this max security thing, but really what it is it's like there's one thing holding it all together, and if that floor doesn't work, then it's just a bunch of prisoners, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, but that one thing is, at least on paper, so incredibly effective. Like, you can't walk anywhere without getting electrocuted strong enough to bring you to your knees. Like, and they can turn that on at any point. So it's like, it is an effective device.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They have literal power over the prisoners, right? So it's not just individual dudes keeping people in line. The entire system, the entire prison is designed around this very physical mechanism of power. That is, when you are not obeying me, you will feel pain. And it's used to great effect, right? Like, Cassian is introduced onto the prison floor. We very quickly find out it's like a factory, like a slave factory producing, nondescript widgets for I don't know what. And we meet his prison boss, Kino, who is another prisoner, right? So he has 7 tables made up of 7 men each across the 7 levels on the floor. We all love symbolism. 7 is a cool number, I guess. And so Kino is the 50th man. He is the boss of the other 49 there. And he explains to Andor that he needs to get to work on his table to keep his numbers up. Cassian and the other men at his table will play against the other tables in the room, and Kino plays against the other floors on the level. The winners get a slight reward, and the losers are disciplined, once again shocked with a hot floor.
I love that the reward is that their food tastes like something. That's
yeah.
They all have these like nutrient paste tubes, and the winner of each shift gets theirs to taste like something.
The winner gets
it's like, wow, thank you.
One thing I definitely noticed going through the second and third time is Cassian is fucked up after this first day. He almost gets shocked again at the end of the night because he's too busy just like staring off into space instead of getting in his bunk. He's like so traumatized from this that on that first night, he's just curled up in a ball on the ground, right? And there's this awesome transition scene where it zooms out, the lights come on, you see his shift counter, because every single one of their bunks has a counter with the number of shifts they have left, drop 30, and he's just brushing his teeth, eating out of his tube, ready to go. Like, he has acclimated, but I had just forgotten how broken he was on that first night.
Mm-hmm. You can see the effectiveness of Imperial efficiency, and then you can see Cassian's resilience, where he once again makes a decision that he is not going to lie down and die, but he's going to fight this. And in fact, he is the instigator. He and another prisoner, Melshi, who was a character from Rogue One. I'm so happy that they brought back rebels that we saw in Rogue One to be characters in this Rogue One prequel series. Him and Melshi are the instigators of, we can't just sit here and take this. Like, we're not going to quietly serve out our sentence. Like, there is no getting out of here unless we get out of here. And so the next several episodes is about convincing Kino of that same thing.
Right, because this really agitates Kino, because he's like, I only have like 30 shifts, whatever it is. I don't know his number, but like he doesn't have a lot left. And he's like, I'm going to be out of here real soon, so let's not cause trouble. And at one point, they're talking about it in the open, and Kino's like, shut up, stop talking. And Cassian goes on a rant similar to what he told Luthen earlier in the series, where he's like, no one's listening. They don't have to care. We're not going to do anything. They believe they have this ultimate power, so no one's listening to us. Like, we can say whatever we want. And they do throughout. They'll say different things, and no one's ever disciplined for it or called out on it, because he's right. Nobody cares. They believe that they have this authority and that they wouldn't dare challenge it.
They have the floor, and that's all they think they need is the floor.
That's all they think they need until...
So it becomes pretty apparent after Cassian has been acclimated and you see a couple more shifts of his that, like, he took that 30 shifts to recover, and he has been working on some shit. He's always asking people different things. He, at one point we see him go into the bathroom and just start like sawing at this water pipe. He keeps asking Kino how many guards on each level, and Kino won't tell him. And it's just, in between all the other scenes we're talking about going away from the prison, you just slowly start to see like how awful this place is. And more prisoners are realizing that like, we're going to have to get out of here. And it all kind of culminates when one day, there's these huge tubes that they go back and forth in between their bunks and the workstations. And these guys will kind of communicate to the other floors with sign language. And something's happening, and they can't really tell what, but everyone's like, something happened on level 2. Like, what happened on level 2? So everyone knows like something's going on. But then the old guy in Cassian's group ends up having like a stroke, right? And so the med tech goes out there, and Cassian and Kino are next to him. And they end up kind of asking the med tech guy, like, what's happening, and be careful with him. He's only got like a few shifts left. Med tech's guy's like, not that it matters anyway. And, what do you mean? And they eventually come to find out that the prison fucked up, and they released a guy who was supposed to be getting out onto another floor, and people recognized him, and they end up frying the entire floor to keep it quiet. And one of the best lines in the whole show happens when after they find this out, and the guard's like, get back to your bunks, on program. They're walking away and the music's building. Cassian says, how many guards on each level for the 10th time? And Kino finally says, never more than 12. And then it cuts to credits, and you're just so fucking pumped for what's coming next.
It's so good. It is such a great moment. It's probably, it's in my top 3 scenes of the show for sure. It's just this amazing read from Andy Serkis, who plays this role so well as Kino. Like, he nails that line. He's just like, never more than 12. And it's just, you see that he is fully locked in. He's like, yeah, we're getting out of here because we have no other choice. We have to leave, and I'm done like dealing with this shit. And it's so good.
No one's getting out, are they?
Not now. Not after this. At least your friend is free.
You two, on program now. Up, hands on your heads. Move. Let's go. Come on, let's go. Now. Let's go.
How many guards on each level?
Never more than 12.
So what is it? I think the beginning of the next episode, they're in their bunks, and everyone's kind of chattering about the news. And some people are saying, like, no, that can't be true. Like, no, that's lies. That's just rebel lies, yada, yada, yada. And then suddenly Kino just screams, like, no one is getting out. And at first, I thought he was, like, back on his shit, just trying to quiet everyone down. But no, he's actually, like, literally no one's getting out of here. So let's get back to our bunks and let's start thinking about what we're going to do about that. And it's just so cool to see him like finally buy in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's such a great scene. I like I said, I think Andy Serkis, who is so good at like so many motion capture roles, you don't often get to see him like play just himself.
Mm-hmm.
And man, he kills this role to me.
Jeff, why don't you start to walk us through the actual break itself? You know, there's a great plan that Cassian and the guys have set up.
Yeah, so like we've talked about this whole time, Cassian and Melshi and other prisoners have been pushing the idea that they need to do something. They need to get out of the prison. And they have finally won Kino over. He has finally accepted it and told them the number of guards per level, right? Well, this whole time they've had a plan. And it revolves around breaking the water main in the refresher that is on the factory floor level. At the time that a new man comes down onto the floor. So another way that Cassian had convinced Kino that it needs to be now is that the rumor about the guy on the second floor getting out has caused them to kill 100 prisoners, right? The guards themselves are afraid. And Cassian has this great argument where there will never be as few guards as there are tomorrow. They're starting to figure out that they need more men to do this, that we are unhappy. And so this is going to be our best chance. So they enact a plan that Cassian and Melshi and others have been coming up with this whole time. When the guards bring down a new prisoner to replace Olaf, who had a stroke and died yesterday, they cut a water main, flood the room, and then Cassian wedges like a rod into the elevator to stop it coming down. And then they all start charging. They start throwing their tools at the guards. They start trying to climb up onto the elevator that's now stuck out. And they expect them to try and light the floor. And this is where they risk it all. The guards start firing on them. One of the guards goes to push the floor lighting button, and half of them are standing up on the tables, hoping not to get shocked. And Kino is just standing on the floor, praying that he's not going to die. And sure enough, the floor shorts out. The myth of Imperial efficiency has been shattered, and now there is an opportunity. So there's this great scene as different prisoners try and fight back against the two guards on these like top railings, gunning them down indiscriminately. We get great shots of certain prisoners that we've gotten to know a little bit just being shot dead and left behind. And then eventually Cassian clambers up, kicks one of the guards, grabs his gun, shoots the other guards, and shoots the rest of them dead. And finally, Cassian's group is in control of the floor. At this point, they run around stealing the weapons on their floor and racing towards the top of the prison where they know the control center to be. There's this great quick moment where Kino's like, we have to hold the floor. And Cassian's like, let someone else do that. They're on a mission. Cassian and Kino run to the top of the prison through this huge but empty stairwell, and just as the Imperial control center, we go to the control center, we see the head of the prison, the guy who's been speaking in this voice, giving them commands this whole time. We see who he actually is, the real person. Just as he's about to be like, light all of level 5, burn the whole thing down, put a firewall around it and kill them all, Cassian walks in, points a gun at him, and shuts the whole thing down. And Cassian shows that he means business, because the moment the prison head like tries to push back, he shoots one of the operators dead and lines them up against the wall.
The whole thing is so good. From the part where they're screaming like, on the tables, you know, you can see everyone has gotten word of the plan. They're all working together. And then of course, you know, it all culminates in Kino's big speech, which is great, because he starts to give this little speech to try to rally everyone, and Cassian literally says, "Is that the best you can do?" And Kino just immediately just like turns up the dramatics, and I mean, dramatics might not even be the right word. It's not like it's uncalled for, right? But it's just so inspiring, and it ends with him screaming, you know, one way out. We all know there's only one way out of here, and I think what's really cool about that is obviously the immediate inclination is one way out. We have to escape, right? We have to fight. We have to escape. We have to get out of here. But we see a super bittersweet moment right at the end of the prison break that I think it makes you realize that there's actually two ways out. And unfortunately, Kino's is a little different than everyone else's.
Yeah.
The line where he just hits us with the, I can't swim. And you hear it over Cassian trying to like call out for him, like, come on, and just over it you just hear, can't swim, and you're just like, no, like because you know that Kino knows that they're surrounded by water. They didn't make it like, they didn't blindfold everybody. They could tell that they were surrounded by water. So this whole time, Kino's doing this knowing that he doesn't really have an escape. Mm-hmm. Like, he can jump, but he'll probably just drown. And, like, maybe somebody can drag him to safety, but, man, it looks like a far swim. So it's like, you know that most likely Kino knows that he's going to die one way or another.
I love that they leave it maybe ambiguous, right? Like, we see... They talk repeatedly about how there's 5,000 prisoners in the prison, right? And we see all of them break out and start swimming away from the prison, and Kino is just left standing there. Cassian gets pushed off, and that's the last time we see him. We don't know what happened to Kino or a lot of the other prisoners, because the next time we pick back up, it's just Cassian and Melshi.
And Cassian and Melshi both ask, like, do you think anybody else made it out? Because they don't know. They don't. Like, it's left a mystery. You don't know if anybody else who's there survived. And it's a really... So many of these, like, all of these arcs have, like, their 2-episode build and then just a really insane, stellar, like, climactic episode. And episode 10 might be the best of those, just as a whole package, especially because of the way that it ends.
Yeah. I think episode 10 is my favorite because we get the great payoff of the prison break. And then we get to dive back into the ISB and find out what, Luthen's most expensive plot, lie, or setup has been, and that is his source within the ISB hierarchy. So, Adam, do you want to talk a bit about who Lonnie is?
Yeah, so Lonnie is this guy we've seen in the ISB meetings a few times now. I think even in the most recent one before this, they're talking about the plan where they've captured Ando Krieger's pilot, and they're trying to decide what to do with him because they found out about Krieger's planned raid, but they don't want him to know they found out. So they're like at a stage that the ship actually just like broke apart in orbit or something. And Lonnie even like is chiming in there and he's saying things like, "No, sir, I wouldn't want us to be there at the crash site. I think we should back off and make it seem like normal." So he's really involved with it. And then at the end of this episode, you see him walking through some like dingy Coruscant alleyway, and he gets on this elevator, and as soon as the door closes, he starts like feeling around for this headpiece, and he gets on it, and he starts talking to someone, and you quickly realize that it's Luthen. And basically, Lonnie's here to give him a little bit of information. He says, they know about this raid, yada, yada, but then Luthen kind of hits him with the, okay, but like, why are you really here? You didn't come all this way just for that. And it turns out Lonnie wants out. He's a father now. He's married. He wants to tell the ISB that his partner's parents have like a shipping business or something he can join. He wants out of the ISB. He wants out of the rebellion. He just wants out. And as soon as he says this, the elevator stops and it opens up to this walkway, on the 1,000,000th floor of a Coruscant building. And it's dark and it's dingy and it's just Luthen standing there about 20 feet away. And you can tell Lonnie has like probably never seen him in person, or at least hasn't often, and certainly didn't expect to now. And then they get into a little exchange, and I think it's, before the monologue that everyone really knows, there's a couple really interesting lines where Luthen basically says, like, no, like, you're a hero, Lonnie. Like, literally, I think about you all the time. Like, the double life you lead, the anguish you must go through every day to keep up this facade. Like, you are a hero of this movement. And then so, of course, like, Lonnie hits him with the, well, what do you sacrifice? And then either one of you can take this, just describing the overall vibe of the speech, which is fantastic.
Luthen is a little bit taken aback, right? But he's also indignant and almost proud of his sacrifice, right? And then he goes through and he explains to Lonnie exactly what he sacrificed, which is himself, his soul, like any payoff for the movement that his ego started 15 years ago, right? This is Luthen acknowledging that he is condemned to use the tools of his enemy to defeat him, and that he himself is now like a corrupt terrible person, like organizing murders and letting valiant rebels die, even though he could save their lives, all in the name of the cause. There was this great moment earlier with him and Saw Gerrera, where he is explaining to Saw that, Anto Krieger must die, and Saw is all like, oh, for the greater good. And Luthen's like, call it what you will. And Saw's like, let's call it war. And this is Luthen's speech explaining what it takes to fight a war against the Empire, and he has sacrificed everything for it.
Nails it. I mean, perfect. Like, it could read so cheesy and so over the top and so like, I sacrifice everything, but like, you believe every single word of it. It's perfectly executed.
I love that they reference that he took a vow. He brings this up with
Mon as
well. Or Armand. Yeah. There's multiple times in this episode where he references that like Lonnie took a vow and he took a vow and Mon Mothma took a vow. So there's clearly like this insinuation that 15 years ago they like all stood up, this little organization, like swearing their lives to taking down the Empire. And Lonnie has been embedded in the ISB, working his way up for 6 years, and he's just too valuable to let go.
There's that great line about like him sacrificing Krieger so that Lonnie's daughter can have a father. Like, I'm going to sacrifice them so that your daughter can see you. I'm not going to burn you. And like, yeah, that's going to suck for Krieger's men, but you are way more valuable than all of them put together.
Yep. It's such a great bit of what is emotional manipulation on Luthen's part, and like also, Luthen making Lonnie stick to his guns. Like, there is no walking away here. You have signed up for the long haul, and you don't have a choice in this. And it's just such a great demonstration of the world building they do with Luthen and the sacrifices the different rebels have to make, and like how there is a character like Luthen to build this network and build the sparks of rebellion. It's just incredibly interesting, and probably the best world building that Star Wars has done in, I don't know, since the original trilogy.
I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, they set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything!
It's so good. I could talk about this arc all day. The whole thing with Saw and Luthen is so cool because, the first time he went, he was trying to convince Saw to join Andor Krieger in the raid, and Saw didn't want to. Then when he finds out all the stuff from Lonnie, he goes back to try to get him not to do it, and now Saw is like gearing up for the raid. He's like, tell him we're ready. And Luthen has to talk him down and basically be like, no, like here's the deal. We actually need to let this guy walk into the saw blade, right? Just get annihilated.
And there's that great moment where Saw like realizes that Luthen only knows that because he has a guy in the ISB, and he's like, you have a guy everywhere. There's a guy, there could be a guy here, a guy there. Like, oh yeah, you have spies everywhere. Like, I can't trust you at all.
Yeah, then he just calls a random guy standing there. He's like, oh yeah, actually that's my contact.
Yeah, that's my guy.
I think it's like
very funny moment.
I think it's like one of Saw's like right hand dudes. That character is also in Rogue One, and of course Saw, Forrest Whitaker character is too. But Tubes is another like one of his guys who's there, and it's so funny when Luthen is just like, yeah, it's Tubes, and Saw absolutely loses
Tubes is like, wait, like what? No, it's not me.
The arcs get a little mixed up here, as we've established, because like episodes 11 and 12 kind of go back to 7, so some of this might be a little out of order. But one thing I really wanted to mention was Luthen's assistant, Clea, is such a cool character for how little kind of screen time she gets. Because she's very much the person, you see these moments where as calculated as Luthen is, he's made the mistake with Andor, it's haunting him, and he's being kind of rash, and she has to tell him at one point, like, you're slipping. Like, I'm thinking clearly, you're not, we need to shut down the Ferric signal. And there's another time where Vel comes in to meet her there, she's like, where's Luthen? And she's just like, oh, I don't know what piece you're talking about. And she's like, I don't have time for games. And she's just like, there are rules for a reason, and you don't seem to recognize this. And Val, I love this part. She says, I brought him Aldani. What have you done lately? And Clay is just like, lately? I don't have lately. I have every day, right? I have a sea of panicked faces coming to my front door, a view of which are but one but many. Oh, it's just so good. Clea is such a cool character. I really hope she has like more going on next season.
It's so funny to see how like even the most minor characters in the show like play an important supporting role like in all kinds of places in the narrative. Clea is a really important character. Mon Mothma's family are really important characters. I suppose Vel kind of rises to main cast for a little bit during the Aldani arc, but then she becomes sort of a side character where you find out that she's Mon Mothma's cousin, which is crazy. Like they don't tell you that at all up until she goes and visits Mon.
Yeah.
So that's just like another little twist for you, which is again just like such. I guess Star Wars really likes to do this thing where they try and like connect a lot of different things.
It's about family,
right? It's about family.
Remember, Star Wars is about family. Yeah, it's a circle.
And there's definitely family in this show too. But I think the family connections in this show are done in a way that feels different from the inevitable like, oh, it's tied to the Skywalker family thing. This show is about connections and the relationships people have, but it's also firmly rooted in the wider world of the Empire, bringing the institutions of the galaxy down onto the people.
And I think their relationship, Vel and Mon, is particularly there to illustrate that, like, two people from the same background ending up both supporting the rebellion, but in very different ways, right? I mean, at one point, Mon even says, like, I am just begging you to be a spoiled rich girl for a little while. Like, she really doesn't... Mon doesn't have the taste for the kind of things Vel is doing. Like, she knows that at the end of the day, they don't have a choice, and it's what needs to be done. But she has so many moments of doubt in this with both Luthen and Vel, and they both basically hit her with the, hey, like, you took a vow, or like we're taking a side. That's what we're doing right now. She definitely lives a comfortable life, and I think that's part of what makes her kind of freak out about it. Is she has a daughter. Vel doesn't have a daughter, at least not that we know of, right? Like none of the main people who do fighting and shooting shit in this show seem to have kids, right? So Mon being a mother definitely puts her in a different position, I think.
Yeah,
very true.
That is an interesting point, and Vel kind of gets. Teased or dunked on by a parent at least once for being single at her age and stuff. So you can see a bit of the conservatism of the Chandrilan culture and also like its toxicity. So
yeah, as we head into this last arc, there is, and it kind of gets mixed up a little bit of like when Vel is talking to Mon and everything, but at least in my head. But in this last arc, I think we do see some interesting interactions between the two of them, like you were saying. And I like seeing Mon get like pushed further into this and doing things that make her uncomfortable. And like, I am going to have to do things that I don't like. There's going to be things that will make me uncomfortable. I will have to do the things that I don't want to do, even to the point of like, selling out her daughter basically to this guy's son. And like her daughter seems into it, but you could tell Mon is like very upset by this interaction and very like upset by what she had to do, but she knows it's for the cause and that it's the right thing to do to push the rebellion forward, even if maybe it's not the right thing for her daughter. And she kind of makes that decision. Yeah. And it's almost like a switch has kind of flipped for Mon.
Lita is part of some like conservative trad wife Girl Scout group or something. Like it's hard to...
it's so weird. Yeah, it's never really like fully explained, but Vel seems to very much not like it.
But it's great, right? Because Jeff, you mentioned Cassian has the moment where he gets arrested and he realizes he can't run away from this, right? Mon has the same thing. She's been worried about all of this because of her daughter, and then at the end of it, her daughter's wrapped right in the middle of this as much as anyone else. She doesn't know it, but she can't run away from it either, right? So I thought that was a really cool way to kind of round out Mon's story toward the end of this series here, or the end of the season.
Yeah, exactly. There's no hiding from the Empire. I think my favorite interaction with Mon is the fact that she has no idea what Vel does. And Vel doesn't really know what Mon's doing for the Empire either. Like Mon goes to Luthen and asks him like, Aldani, was that you? And then you come to find out, Vel's her cousin and pulled off the entire heist and she has no idea. So there's just so much clandestine stuff in there. And it's like you said, it's the Empire infiltrating her family. And, Vel's, it's not Vel's line, it's actually Cinta's line. It's all about how the rebellion comes first and they get to take what's left.
Yeah, some of the scenes with Vel and Cinta are really kind of like heartwarming or heartbreaking, because you can tell it's like the personal and the political clashing, and Vel has slightly different priorities than Cinta. I mean, Cinta says like you just said, right? She's like, the rebellion comes first. We take what's left, and then Vel repeats that to Mon later, because I think Vel kind of understands like, as much as she may want to take a break, as Cinta says, the Empire doesn't take breaks. The Empire doesn't stop to catch its breath. But one of the scenes we're left with right after the prison, right? Austin, you kind of mentioned this earlier, is it's Cass and Melshi, and Cass is phoning home, and he's basically trying to say like, hey, like I'm going to be back. Tell Maarva I'm okay. Tell her I'm coming to get her. Like I have the money, and we're gonna get out of here, right? And they're like, hey, Cass, he's talking to Zan, I think, on the phone, and he keeps saying no names. But then once he says Cass, like Maarva's dead, he no longer cares about names. He doesn't say anything. He just kind of gets that like 1,000-yard stare. And that's when he has the conversation with Melshi, where they're saying, people have to know about this. Like, we may have been the only ones to escape. People have to know what's going on.
How many do you think made it? How many of us made it out alive? Not enough. What if it's just us? What if we're the only ones? Somebody's got to tell people what's happening down there. We need to split up. Double our chances. One of us has to make it. People have to know what's going on. I know.
And that's when Cass is heading back to Ferrix, and everyone kind of knows this one way or the other, right? The ISB has gotten wind of Maarva's funeral, and they think he's going to come back for it. Luthen finds out from the ISB that that's what's happening, so he's got Cass and Vel there, or he's got Cinta and Vel there. Daedra has her two assistants there. One of her assistants, Corvo, and Cinta are actually interacting with each other, neither aware at first that they're spies for opposing sides, both staking the same house. Cinta puts it together. Yeah. Corvo never really does, or Corv. That's a really cool scene. And yeah, this whole thing culminates in Cass coming back to the planet and realizing that Bix has been captured, and he's trying to save her while Martha's funeral's going on. What happens here? I forget what actually starts the rebellion or the riot. Oh, it's the droid being kicked over.
Well,
right?
It's Maarva's big speech, and then the droid getting knocked over.
Because the speech is fantastic, and it's just basically saying like, y'all should start breaking shit right now.
She literally says, fight the Empire, and that's when they're like, nope, we gotta turn that shit off.
So there's this great line where there's an earlier scene where Miro, Daedra, is explaining the Ferrix like burial ceremony to some ISB people, right? She says that they take your ashes, mix you up with stone, make you into Ferrix brick, and then find you a wall. And so here's the thing, this procession, Maarva's funeral procession, is led by Brazo because Cassian can't be there, obviously. Cassian is in the background executing their plan to rescue Bix. So Brazo literally has Maarva's brick. And Maarva's speech whips up the crowd into a frenzy, and then the Imperial prefects, remember, the title didn't come with more money. He just wanted to be called prefect.
That's true.
The Imperial
Poor guy.
prefect comes out and tries to throw his coat over B2 in order to shut down the speech. And that causes the crowd to riot, and Brazo proceeds to not find Maarva a wall, but start beating Imperial troopers to death with her brick.
He Barton kicks the guy who covers up the brick, right? Which is just awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he starts bashing people with the brick, which is both symbolic and just cool. That whole thing is awesome, right? And then the kid that we've seen, during this whole final episode, we've seen little glimpses of someone building what looks like an IED, essentially.
Yeah, so I didn't catch this the first time. So Pack is the shop owner, and he's the guy they torture, and then the prefect's like, I would love to hang him, and Miro's like, do as you wish. And so this is Pack's son. They have just killed his dad, and now he's in their shop wiring up an IED.
He's like, I'm gonna blow everyone up.
This is like where it gets hard to follow all of the different minor characters. We've probably said 40 different names like in this recording, right? And so on the third rewatch, I finally realized it was a recently killed man's son who decides to build a bomb and throw it in the middle of a riot.
And there's this cool effect when it blows up because everyone kind of stops fighting for half a second and starts looking around. But then that's when I think both sides of it sort of realize, like, oh no, okay, actually it's really, really real now. And they start fighting again. And Cyril wanders through the crowd and grabs Daedra and like pretends to be holding her up and like pulls her aside, right?
Yeah, this was kind of interesting to me because this is kind of the first time we see Daedra crack a little bit. Like, she's been kind of behind the scenes and being all manipulative and powerful and stuff behind the scenes and very intimidating. And when she gets out there into the action and into the fighting, she kind of freezes. Understandably, right? Like, I mean, it's a terrifying place to be, but she kind of panics a little bit. And Cyril, interestingly enough, is kind of the one to calm her down and rescue her.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess he's learned a little bit since his last experience in Ferrix, but I love Miro in the scene getting, caught up in the riot because she has been so sinister and so in control the whole time. And then you get to see what happens to her when she like loses control. And like so many of these Imperials, like they're just not good at reacting in chaos. And Cassian is. Cassian takes advantage of the chaos, sneaks into the Imperial base, which is the old Ferrix Hotel, and starts to rescue Brix. Of course, what I love about the post-bomb going off scene, right, is that for the first time, really, you start to see stormtroopers in action in this series. Like, they've been around, they've been present, but this series did such a great job building up from the Primor security guards up to, like, Imperial security officers and some ISB guys and, like, Imperial troopers to finally having the stormtroopers on scene. And this is a brutal scene where they start gunning down people in the streets.
Open fire.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That poor schmuck who got roughed up after messing with B2 starts telling them to start shooting the civilians, and the stormtroopers start gunning people down. And you know what? They don't miss that often.
Zan found out that they're actually pretty accurate. You can be on someone's back spinning in circles and they'll still shoot you right in the back. So
yeah, there's this another lingering scene where a stormtrooper like starts to gun down a daughter of Ferrix, an old woman, right? And you see Zan jump on him, try and take down the trooper until one of the trooper's buddies shoots him down. And I love the gravity of the blasters in this whole series, right? Like, this isn't the first time someone's shot a weapon, but the blasters, like the effects, the sound, the cinematics of it, it's just so different than what we've seen in other series and what we might be used to from video games. Like, they are harsh, heavy, dangerous things, right? Like, people get shot and they drop. Blasters are deadly. Of course, that doesn't mean that, there aren't any fun shots in the riot sequence. Adam, do you want to talk about the Anvil Man's contribution?
So in the very first episode, we get introduced to what appears to be Ferrix's like church bell, but instead of it being a church bell, it's a guy with a giant anvil on top of a tower, and he's just slamming hammers on it. And I thought this was really cool, right? And then so, of course, during the rebellion, the riot there at the end, he is slamming on that, and we see like a stormtrooper go up to stop him, and he just like kicks him off, which is freaking awesome. It's this really interesting thing because it accomplishes, like, you don't know exactly what this anvil is, but you also know exactly what it's doing, right? It's sending some sort of signal. It's like the sound of the rebellion now. This guy hammering on it is clearly important. It's rallying everyone. And it's just a cool like cultural thing along with the bricks, right? I mean, they do so much world building for this planet we'll probably never see again. Everything in these last 2 episodes is fantastic. There's some stuff we even forgot to mention because there's actually a lot going on. The reason Cyril's there is because when he was at his mom's house, he got a call from that old sergeant. And it's a funny scene because the connection's bad. And Cyril keeps saying things, and then the sergeant keeps responding to something else because he thought he heard something else. And Cyril's getting like pissed off, like, no, it's not what I said. And the sergeant's just like, yeah, I'm eating bread, or something like that. And but I thought it's really interesting because the sergeant says, no, I know a guy who's still there from the transition. Right? The Empire never replaced him. So he knows what's going on right now down there. And he told me about it. So him and Cyril get together and they go. Luthen's actually standing right behind them, like half of the episode. And, they don't know who he is. But Luthen's like observing these two, and they're observing the way he's looking at Daedra and stuff, which I'm sure will pay dividends later.
Yeah, it's so funny to me how this ultimate episode, this ultimate climax for the series where Maarva drives them all to start an active rebellion on Ferrix, right? We have somehow roped up everyone who's ever wanted to look for Andor and gotten them all onto Ferrix. Mm-hmm. Luthen is there. Daedra is there. Cyril is there. All of his friends are obviously still there. So everyone is there and looking for Andor. And it's really crazy to see guys like Cyril just walk right by Luthen, or Andor spot Luthen casually like hanging out on the planet looking for him because he's trying to kill the guy.
If I could do it again, I'd wake up early and be fighting these bastards from the start. Fight the Empire!
He really does wrap up everything, right? I mean, we're talking about the beginning. Maybe the show could have had a different name for marketing purposes. But by the end of it, he really is, wittingly or not, he's integral to so many events in this show. And everything revolves around him in one way or another, right? I thought this climax was great. It really just it wraps up a bunch of stuff. It sets up some things. I would say the only part I really don't care for at the end is, we talked about Cyril being weird. I mean, he gets really weird in the last few episodes, and he's like kind of stalking Daedra. And I don't think it's like romantic, but I do think he has kind of an obsession with her. And
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and the way they kind of like interact at the very end, it almost looks like they're about to kiss, but like they're not going to, of course. But it's just weird. I'm not really entirely sure how I'm supposed to read that. But yeah, that's like my one complaint in the last 3 episodes here. I mean, it's really well done.
I'm totally convinced that Cyril is just once again like the foil of Cassian's character, right? Like Cyril saves Miro the same way that Cassian is off saving Bix. But you see Cassian's saving Bix as like a heroic act of loyalty to our friend, right? And it's not weird at all. Meanwhile, Cyril is a man of broken relationships and just like a utterly horrendous personality, right? And so he does good act for someone else, kind of, and it still makes your skin crawl.
I think your read on obsession is right. I don't think it's romantic as much as it is like, you are a person of authority and I crave authority and justice and order, and like you are my beacon of that, and I am obsessed with you and what you represent. And like, he shows it in a really weird way, and that scene does read a little more romantic than, I think, purposefully, right? I mean, I think it's purposefully like supposed to make you uncomfortable and make you think maybe there's romantic feelings there, and I don't think it's that at all. I think it's just Cyril is like weirdly obsessed with Daedra.
Yeah, exactly. I think the connotations are there to just make it more off-putting. But yeah, it's once again Cyril just having unhealthy obsessions with things, and apparently like he is most ambitious to serve a competent authority, and that's what he wants to do.
Yes. This kind of, I feel like after all of this, the resolution of this is honestly pretty quick. Like there's the riot happens and we see Bix get rescued, and like B2 and Brasso and Cassian and Bix all like get to a plane or get to a ship, not a plane. This is Star Wars. They get to a ship and like Cassian loads all of them up on the ship, is like, get out of here. And Bix is like, Cassian will find us, and he's like, yes, I will. Like, because then he runs off and goes to confront Luthen in a pretty interesting scene. Like he's stowed away on Luthen's ship, and he knows that Luthen has come here to kill him. And Luthen's kind of talking to him, he's like, you don't make it easy. And then he says, I will now. Like, basically, like, either kill me or like let's do this. Like, it feels like he's like choosing to be part of the rebellion or kill him.
Yeah, and
it's kind of how I read that scene.
Yeah, I think it's during one of the scenes where he's watching everyone's reaction to Maarva that I think it kind of hits him that like maybe this is a loose end I don't have to tie up, because now everyone on this planet is pretty much part of the rebellion now, right? In some form or another. I can't tell if I don't think he knew Cassian was going to be on his ship, right? Like, he wasn't going back to find him necessarily, but I do think he was kind of giving up killing him in that moment. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, Maarva's speech moves Luthen, which is surprising because, 2 episodes ago we were so impressed by Luthen's demeanor and like conviction and things like that. But he is on the ground witnessing this great act of rebellion spurred on by the death of Andor's mother, and I think that really makes him reconsider.
Yeah, I don't think it contradicts Luthen's like personality of conviction and like doing whatever is necessary. I think it's just in that moment he realizes, okay, this isn't necessary anymore. Like, Cassian, spurred on by his mother's, words, will join the rebellion and will be an asset to us, and he's not somebody who's going to rat me out to the Empire or like give up information. Like, he is now part of the cause.
Yeah, this is Luthen coming back around to his first assessment of Cassian, in episode 3, when he's like, I'm here for you. I don't care about the star path. Like, you are talent that, needs to be recruited and needs to be nurtured. Don't you want to fight these bastards for real? And so it's that final,
what a line.
I know. It's that final confrontation with Luthen on his ship, where Luthen realizes that Andor has come around to his way of thinking. And so he's not a loose end to tie up anymore, but he is a stalwart member of the rebellion.
In a show full of amazing characters, he really may end up being the best one. And I just keep going back to his speech and the whole condemned to use like my enemies' tools against them. You look at everyone else, like Cass doesn't want to abandon the people he met on Aldhani. Mon doesn't want to lose her daughter. Vel doesn't want to kill the hostage family, right? Luthen basically has to make all these decisions. Like, he has to. He has to do all the dirty stuff. And he is doing it so that others don't, right? Like, it's just such a it's everything in his speech, right? It is a thankless sacrifice that he will never reap the rewards of, and yet he's committed to it as full as anyone could be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Luthen is genuinely my favorite character of the show. He steals every scene that he's in. I feel like every scene that he shows up adds a new layer of either like tension or gravitas, or just there's something extra when Luthen's on screen. There's that little bit of oomph that every scene gets when he's on there. His delivery, the lines that he's given, the way he speaks, the attitude, the persona that he has, just adds a little something to the idea of rebellion that I don't think anybody else brings the same way. And it is genuinely my favorite moments of the show are probably all the ones that Luthen are in.
You know what I wanted to mention earlier? The way the fucking droid basically cries when Maarva dies. This is annoying to me because it just suddenly retcons so many people in the Star Wars universe into being slavers and psychopaths. Like, the droids have feelings and stuff. I don't believe this. This is the one part of this show I'm just going to ignore entirely.
You can't think too hard about droids in Star Wars. This is a thing the internet has been pointing out for a while, that like, you know, if you try and like examine droids clinically in the Star Wars universe, it seems like they're sapient beings and enslaving them is pretty fucked up. So we're just going to pretend that they are comic relief characters.
Yeah, and yet like the entire army that you fight in the prequels is so that the Jedi don't have to kill people, so they're just killing droids. But then it turns out they might all have feelings this whole time. So,
well,
who knows?
What even are the clones?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't look too much into that one.
But I just think you have to, otherwise, like Star Wars gets like too dark. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to interrogate that line of thinking, but I do think that B2 has more emotion than the entire prequel series. So,
yes. We hate the prequel series.
Yeah. Have we complained yet that there is a show called Star Wars Rebels and it's about like 6 fucking Jedi? Because I'm just gonna go ahead and complain about that real quick.
There's only 2, technically speaking.
Yeah, but here's the thing: there's fucking not, because there's like the shitty Inquisitors, and then Sabine's gonna be one later, and then Ahsoka shows up. Like, yeah, don't fucking tell me there's
Ahsoka's
only
not
2.
a Jedi, technically.
Is Sabine?
Ezra's in training for Jedi-ness, kind of.
There's like a half dozen of those fuckers.
I like Rebels, thank you.
Sabine is such a funny character to me because she's like a pirate, Mandalorian, bounty hunter, rebel, Jedi, or whatever. Like, she just gets to be all the things, So
Sabine's awesome. I will hear no Sabine disrespect.
The way Austin was describing the first 2 episodes of the show is how I felt about every single second of Ahsoka. Every single second of that fucking show was so terribly.
It's fine. We don't need to rehash how much we don't like other Star Wars properties.
Right, you guys should
Andor's
just go
good. I get it.
watch The Acolyte and Skeleton Crew instead.
You should just watch Andor 3 times. That's what.
My bad. Yes.
Well, and this kind of leads us into season 2, since we've kind of wrapped up on season 1. Season 2 comes out, right? I mean, who knows when this episode goes out, but it's very soon, and we know that it goes all the way up to Rogue One, like to the start of Rogue One. So I'm very interested to see how they tie all that together, because where it ends here, I still don't really have like a clear view of like how far away is Rogue One. What, he needs to meet K2 at some point, and like the pieces of like Mon Mothma getting together with the rest of the Alliance and like kind of setting all this stuff up. Like, there's a lot of pieces that have to come together, and I'm curious to see how they're going to tie all that in to make it to where we can get to the start of Rogue One and it makes sense. And there's only 12 episodes to do it, so I'm interested to see how that happens.
Do you guys think, because remember, we get the metal walking stick that looks like a lightsaber. We get the Kyber crystal. We get the lightsabers coming out of his spaceship. We didn't even talk about that scene, which is really fucking cool.
That is the coolest use of a spaceship I've ever seen. It's so awesome. It is so fucking cool.
Like both
dude.
disables and escapes from an entire like tractor beam space station thing in his tiny little ship. It's so cool. He very clearly has super high tech stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I like totally forgot about that scene, and rewatching it, I was like blown away again. I was like, oh man, that was so cool.
It is super cool. Like, it feels a little bit like someone ordered like, look, we have to have a cool like space fight scene at Star Wars. Are you nuts? Like, you have to do that. But I don't care because it was great.
I think it works in context though. Like, it makes sense that Luthen would have the type of tech to get away, and it also makes sense that the Empire is on high alert around that area and like would want to capture Luthen, or would want to interrogate someone who is a little bit suspicious, and then for him to be like, nah, I'm prepared, like you don't catch me, was really cool to me.
And he even almost gets out of it, right? Because they're like, oh, it's a Alderaan trade transponder, should we let him go? And then the captain's just like, no, we need the practice.
No.
That's right. It's not even that he's suspicious. He just wants to use the gun that he was given.
Pretty much.
Yep. Austin, how disappointed would you be if Luthen was a Jedi?
Well, I like the Jedi, so I wouldn't be that disappointed. But it would be a little like, why? Like, as much as I do like the Jedi, and I like Jedi like lore and history and seeing them pop up in all the various Star Wars media, this does feel like the one where it's like, yeah, you didn't need a Jedi.
Mm-hmm. Adam, what about you?
I would be immensely disappointed. There are no words for how distraught I would be, and I would probably stop watching it immediately.
You would not.
Just crush this man's soul, yeah.
But not to drag this out too much longer, because we've been doing this for about 2 hours and 45 minutes now. But I did want to mention like something we talked about a lot that I think is just worth bringing up in the episode. So I had my bachelor party a couple weeks ago, and you two were there among some other rabid Star Wars fans, and there were many discussions. And we had a friend, my friend Harry, shout out, who had what we'll call a controversial couple of takes, but it did spawn some really interesting discussion. And one of the things he said was like, so Andor's a good story, but is it a good Star Wars story? And we must have talked for, I know you guys said on the way home you talked for hours. We've talked in Discord a bajillion times about it. What makes Star Wars what it is, and why? What would make people say this isn't a good Star Wars story? And is it just the fact there's no Jedi in it, or is there something else?
We discussed this for like an hour on the way home, and I think I understand where Harry's coming from, even if I don't necessarily fully agree. I can totally understand the point that's being made, because I don't think it's just because of the Jedi. Mm-hmm. I think Andor carries with it a very specific tone that is unlike anything in Star Wars before. And I know there's some argument about like, oh, it's reminiscent of the Empire scenes in episode 4 and episode 5. And yeah, maybe a little bit, maybe like loosely. But I think this takes such a more like dramatic, dark, political tone. Whereas Star Wars is very like fun and adventurous and like you said, the hero's journey. And like, let's take this adventure element and the fantastical element, and we're going to take that even into the Empire's very like, you know, they're evil, but like for the most part, they don't ever come across as like super duper intimidating.
Yeah. My favorite thing for franchises to do is to tell different kinds of stories in the same setting. And I think that's what Andor does so successfully. It is not the same hero's journey that we've seen a dozen times before with some different set dressing. It is a political drama about the rise of fascism in a galaxy far, far away. And I think the reason it fits very well with the original trilogy is the Empire in the original trilogy is fascist coded, right? They are dressed like Nazis. They speak like British Imperial.
Tons of World War II imagery.
Yes. So basically those movies were made at a time where simply by looking at the Empire, you assumed those connotations. You assumed that they were directly evil. And the franchise opens with stormtroopers gunning down a bunch of what looks like regular security guards and Darth Vader choking a man to death like on screen, right? The Empire is supposed to obviously be the bad guys, obviously be intimidating, and obviously be the thing you should fight against. Now, of course, the overall arc of the original trilogy is it's a hero's journey. It's an adventure story. You kind of just accept by default that the Empire are the bad guys, the rebels are the good guys, and like they should win, right? And that is the start of the franchise, and that's a good place for things to start. But what's fun about long tenured franchises is to tell different kind of stories, to dive deeper into underlying motifs. And I don't think you can act like Star Wars isn't like fertile ground for political drama and for interrogating, like, what does it mean for an empire to rise out of a republic and out of democracy, right? Like, I realize I watched these movies a lot when I was younger. Like, I used to think the word Imperial just meant the bad guys from Star Wars. Like, I got real confused in school when we started talking about the British Empire, and I was like, what about stormtroopers?
But and they're all British in Star Wars. You like might think they're related at first, you know. Like,
yeah,
it makes sense.
It's just the future of the UK.
It's another way that the original trilogy like bad guy codes the Empire. And what I think, like, I realize, so to me, this is a return to form from Star Wars. This feels like a sequel to The Empire Strikes Back, or a prequel to The Empire Strikes Back, that really tells the story of like what happened before the hero's journey in the original trilogy. And while the franchise has been around for 40 years, so me calling this a return to form doesn't make sense. Most of the franchise existence has been telling Star Wars stories in a way that like feels different to me, but Andor feels quintessentially Star Wars. Is it more gritty and more adult than the original trilogy or like the expanded universe stuff from the 90s? Like, absolutely. But I think there's a lot of room to tell those kinds of stories in this franchise. So Adam, we'll give the last word to you.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to is Austin, you say like a large part of the first movie is the Jedi. It's literally half, right? And we've seen the Jedi half explored so many times since then in so many different ways. And a lot of it's good, right? I mean, I really liked certain arcs of the Clone Wars cartoon. I think someone out there liked Obi-Wan, and good for them. But like, we really haven't.
I liked Obi-Wan enough.
Truly the worst thing Disney's done. I'm sorry, the second worst thing. We always have to leave room for the Rise of Skywalker, but.
Oh God!
But that other half of it, to Jeff's point, really hasn't been, I think, explored quite as much. Just that actual like. Where did the Empire come from? The entire prequel trilogy is about where Palpatine came from. It's really not about where the Empire came from, right?
Absolutely.
So getting to see more of that build up, I think, is really cool. And as far as like, the political storytelling, I mean, there's a lot of room here in Star Wars to do that, right? And it doesn't mean like you don't need to overanalyze it. You don't need to go through Andor and be like, oh, which one's Donald Trump? But like, you can see the parallels. And I think really what it's all about is it's the same reason George Lucas was doing the World War II stuff. George Lucas didn't fight in World War II, right? But stories of that and the history of that shaped his opinions on a lot of things. And then, there was like Vietnam and the whole Andor thing. So it's, you're really what you're doing is you're like opening up a window for people to see the past in order to contrast that to the present, right? Less so than like, this is a direct commentary on what's going on now. It may or may not be, but I think more importantly, it's like, it's inviting you to think about how the times you live in now may or may not relate to times from long ago, right? And I think Star Wars really is a great vehicle for it during the Galactic Civil War, right? Because the Clone Wars, it's a different conflict. It's robots and clones. There's literally no fucking people involved. And it's all the Jedi, right? The Jedi are in Episode 1, and they never stop being there. And there's never really a plot going on that doesn't involve them, right? So I think... someone like Harry we're talking about, Harry's a few years younger than me. That man probably grew up on the prequels. My first experience was the special edition original trilogy in theaters, right? So I think part of where you're coming from, where you started with Star Wars, is going to kind of influence how you feel about whether or not Andor is a, quote, good Star Wars story. But I think as far as like the other half of Star Wars, which I feel is really neglected, not necessarily the time period, but the actual like Galactic Civil War, I find is really neglected. And, just having something dive so headfirst into that and just being focused on that was such a breath of fresh air, and really does feel like every single scene in the ISB room reminds me of like Tarkin and being on the Death Star, right? Like it's just so reminiscent of it. Even some of the dialogue is similar, like the music, the tone, just everything about it. I like that, and to me, that is every bit as much Star Wars as the Jedi. I don't think it's more or less. They're equal, right? And we haven't gotten to explore them equally. And so I like the fact that this show is trying to catch up the other side of it by not even focusing on the Jedi one bit. It's like we could do 8 seasons of this and still be behind, right? Still be lopsided. So I'm very appreciative that it's paying attention to that half of Star Wars.
Yeah, I think it's a big part of the reason why the series has been widely well received, even if a lot of folks will talk about it being like not quite a Star Wars story, but I would argue that it absolutely is. These are the prequels to the Empire, not to the Jedi or to the tragedy of Darth Vader, but it's the prequels to the Empire.
The least Star Wars thing about it is that the dialogue is good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey-o.
I mean, the only things I can knock it for not being Star Wars is really like, just compliments. Like it's so well acted. There's such good dialogue.
When I say that I understand the point of view, I do agree with Jeff largely, though, that I think it's important for franchises to try and tell different stories and to do different things. That's part of the reason why I like Skeleton Crew so much, is because it's something that we really haven't seen in Star Wars in the same way. That Andor is obviously a very different tone than Skeleton Crew, but Skeleton Crew also does something that's pretty different than what we see in Star Wars, even though it does have the more like lighthearted tone. So I definitely agree that taking risk and doing different stories in this setting is very important to the franchise. And I do think that Andor does a fantastic job of that. And I do think it is good Star Wars. But I can see where somebody would maybe come from the angle of it's not good Star Wars because it doesn't feel like what we expect Star Wars to feel like.
Yeah, yeah.
I think what Andor does so well, though, is it changes your perception of what Star Wars can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I do also understand where people are coming from when they say it doesn't feel very Star Wars. But I ultimately would say that's from like a lack of imagination. I think the best pieces of media are ones that make you reflect on your own lived experiences and feel different yet familiar. It's one of our favorite lines to talk about, that everything is a remix. And this feels like a really good remix of the political drama elements of Star Wars from the original trilogy. And to me, that's one of the most quintessentially Star Wars things.
And like at the end of the day, all of these things, all creative mediums, right? It's about the people involved. And what's really cool is you can go look at some interviews with like Daedra's actress and like Luthen's actor. And the thing they both talk about is that like, no, I wasn't like over the top excited as in like I've been a huge Star Wars fan all my life. Like the reason I took this role is because the writing was great. Like I read through the script and I was like, this is fantastic. Like Daedra was on like a West End, I think, right? Like the London Broadway. So she's done all kinds of stuff. And she's like, no, this was just another job, but it was also one that I was super happy to do once I started getting into it because I realized how damn good it was. I'm not like a Star Wars fan. I'm just a fan of good work, and that's what this is. And I think having Tony Gilroy come in and do this, someone who's also not really a Star Wars fan, is what allows us to be so different. Because like no shade at Dave Filoni, but that is just like Lucas 2.0, right? Like he's just the heir apparent to that style of storytelling, and you can always tell when he's involved with something. And I think it's cool to have just something that feels nothing like that Lucas-esque stuff.
Yeah.
I think all I was maybe trying to get into the mind of someone who makes this argument is just that I think if you remove the Star Wars-y things from Andor, you lose less than if you were to remove it from other things, from other Star Wars products.
Yeah.
And that is a testament to Andor's quality for sure, but I think that's maybe where people come from. It doesn't feel as Star Wars-y because you could remove those Star Wars-y elements and still have almost the same show, I think, for a lot of people.
I think all that illustrates to me is how much of Star Wars has just had to use the Jedi as a crutch to tell its stories. Like,
yeah.
And that's also a valid argument to that. I mean, I'm not...
I get that. And I think ultimately it doesn't feel like Andor uses the Galactic Civil War as a crutch the way like... I'll stop shitting on Ahsoka. The way Obi-Wan just clearly uses like why are the Inquisitors there, dude? Like, oh my god, I hate that so much. I hate that show so much. We need to end this episode.
It's probably a good spot to end it. We've definitely made our points. I want to end by saying that I did really enjoy Andor. I'm looking forward to Andor season 2. I do not think I enjoyed it as much as either of you. And maybe it's just because I want my Star Wars to be a little more lighthearted, that I don't necessarily want the like super intense political drama out of my Star Wars. I did very much enjoy it still. I can speak to the quality of it, and I think it is probably the best product objectively that Disney has put out under the Star Wars brand, even if I don't know if I like it as much as some of their other things.
Man, just what a perfect time for a drama about the creeping oppression of fascism. It is a fantastic show. If you like sci-fi at all, you should watch Andor.
Yeah, I think I've made my views clear here already, but I'll reiterate. Amazing show. Definitely get to at least episode 3. Understand that it's going to be a little different than what you might be used to. But if you found yourself bouncing off some of Disney's offering lately, this may be the best opportunity to try to get back into like this era of Star Wars. And that wraps up our conversation about the timely political drama Andor.
You can find this episode, as well as all of our previous episodes, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcasting platform.
And you can find us on YouTube and Blue Sky at the Games Gone By podcast.
Signing off for Games Gone By, I'm Adam.
I'm Austin.
And even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time.
There will be times when the struggle seems impossible. I know this already. Alone, unsure, dwarfed by the scale of the enemy. Remember this. Freedom is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously and without instruction. Random acts of insurrection are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy. There are whole armies, battalions that have no idea that they've already enlisted in the cause. Remember that the frontier of the rebellion is everywhere, and even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward. And then remember this. The Imperial need for control is so desperate because it is so unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks. It leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear. Remember that. And know this. The day will come when all these skirmishes and battles, these moments of defiance will have flooded the banks of the Empire's authority, and then there will be one too many. One single thing will break the siege. Remember this. Try.
I can't do a do.
No.
There we go. Thanks, Jeff.
No.
It was too serious. It was too serious to.
We're going to put Jeff's at the end of Nemik's speech, because of course we are.